What's up, Flannelers? I am here with Ben Gretch, and I'm going to start the stream with an announcement because probably the most common request that I've gotten over the past number of years is to turn my YouTube shows into a podcast. And I just decided today, kind of off the cuff, that I'm going to turn just these Wednesday streams into a podcast. These are going to be streams that I'm going to be here with just one guest, so it's going to be a pretty simple, straightforward conversation. I'm going to have on a lot of sharp guests. We're going to talk about the best ball landscape. So just these Wednesday streams, I'm going to be putting out as a podcast every week. I'm going to call it Best Ball Whenever. That was initially what going to be a common show on these YouTube channels. The idea being that you can play Best Ball whenever, and I was just going to stream at random times. Turns out I've learned from my friend Pete Overs that maybe just streaming at random times is not the best idea. You kind of want to have a schedule. So I'm trying to have a schedule here, but I'm going to keep the name anyway. Best Ball Whenever, because you can play Best Ball whenever. So little intro to myself. I am Neil Orfield. I am the founder of the Flannelverse. You can find me on YouTube at Flannelverse. I've been playing fantasy football for about 30 years now. I don't remember how I got started in fantasy football, but I have been obsessed with it for a very long time. Been playing DFS semi-professionally for a while. For about 15 years, I've been playing DFS. Have had some success there, over $1 million in profits in DFS, mostly because I won the Millie Maker on DraftKings. More recently have gotten really into best ball as DFS has gotten a lot tougher. Have really enjoyed getting into best ball. Last year finished 38th in the DraftKings Millie Maker. So finally profitable after a number of years. And I am, again, like I said, bringing on a number of very sharp guests. Today, my guest is Ben Gretch, who has kind of stepped back some of his content, but he's one of the sharpest fantasy football minds I know. So I'm excited to talk with Ben. Ben, how are you doing today?
Good. I'm excited to talk with you too. We were talking before the show. We did a couple of these last year and drafted a few BBM teams, and I think we drafted two. And I remember you tweeting out like on semis week that both of them made the semis. So I was pretty stoked about that. I felt like our hit rate together is pretty high. It's pretty great.
Success per draft. I think that's the best hit rate I had last year. I mean, I don't know that I got two to the semis with anybody else, or any, at least not with anybody else that I only did a couple drafts with. So yeah, that was pretty successful for us last year. Hopefully we can continue that. It's funny because my memory of you and I doing content last year was me kind of convincing you that JJ McCarthy, could be a good pick, which that didn't work.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, we had the conversation where, it's like, well, what if he's actually good? I remember and you'd be like, yeah, you're right. Like if he is actually good in that Viking system, like he could be an absolute smash. You apparently somebody, else with better thoughts convinced you off of it eventually, but that's my one recollection is like, I was like, you know what, if Gretch can get behind this, it's probably not a terrible take.
Oh no, I signed off on it. Oh god.
Yeah,
no, it's funny. You're like me. We remember our bad takes way more than our good ones. It's always the like, oh, what did I miss on, that is that keeps us up at night. But I don't remember us talking. I don't remember you having a JJ McCarthy take. I remember having a good time and chatting ball with you.
Yeah, I know that we drafted good teams despite the JJ McCarthy take. That's just my one memory of like a player take that I had, and I think that I only remember it because you signed off on my idea, and I was like, okay, yeah, it was probably a good thought,
because I was pretty anti Sam Darnold being anything all that special, and that it was more the situation and Kevin O'Connell. And I mean, you'll be surprised to learn that despite him being now a Super Bowl champion, I'm pretty much still in that same boat where I think Sam Darnold, people are like, he was one of the only quarterbacks ever to win 14 games 2 years in a row or whatever that stat was. I think it's not Occam's razor. It's not like the simplest answer, but I think he had two incredible situations in two different cities 2 years in a row.
Yeah.
And that's really what I believe it was. I don't think Sam Darnold is terrible by any means, but he led the league in giveaways last year on an offense that ran the ball like a massive amount, even relative to expectation, and was constantly leading. Like their expected pass rate was super low. Their actual pass rate super low. They put him, which I mean takes you out of the situations where you should be giving the ball away. It takes you out of where you have to force into coverages and everything. You're only throwing when it's like advantageous, non-obvious situations and those things. And he still had the league in giveaways. But hey, he went a multi-game stretch in the playoffs without any giveaways. They go and they win the Super Bowl because they have an incredible D and everything else and JSN. And I'm a Seattle guy myself, but I'm not a big Seahawks fan or anything. But people around here are pretty excited about that Sam Darnold Super Bowl champ.
It's funny. So as a Vikings fan, I watched him implode multiple games in a row at the end of the previous season. So I last year was just like waiting for the implosion, and I did the expert survey for Roto Grinders throughout the playoff, takes on I think it was a best playoff best ball survey or something like that, where I was like you had to like predict ahead of time like who are the bad picks, and I was like Sam Darnold's going way too early. Like I can't imagine Sam Darnold getting to the Super Bowl was my takeover. And I was like, he's gonna implode at some point. And I felt like there were like every game where it was like there were multiple times where it'd be like he'd fumble it, but then he'd fall out, or he'd like throw it to a defender and the defender would drop it. It felt to me like he was kind of getting away with some stuff. But honestly, I think I was just wrong. Like he was way better than I thought.
He was better. Yeah. I mean, he was able to do a lot of things. I also think the NFL moved in a direction where you can win with Sam Darnold now. I mean, like the defenses have been ahead and they continue to be ahead. We saw a lot of parity last year, and we've gotten back to a landscape. Obviously, all the additional tight ends and everything where running is a little more important. The old, like, I think about the first decade of the new century, the 00s or whatever, the 2000 to 2010 era, where it was like run the ball, play defense, punt. Before the big passing revolution, I feel like we're moving back toward that, and it's like, yeah, I mean, a lot of teams go for it on fourth and all those things, but there's a little bit of like old school SEC ball these days where you can play a little of like field position and punt a little bit more and not put yourself in too much danger. Try to stay ahead of the chains, try to throw on early downs, try to throw out of, multi tight end sets, run looks when defenses are not really expecting it. They get into base and all that stuff. And then you'll have some passing efficiency. Then you'll be able to manage the fact that your quarterback's not a superstar quarterback necessarily. And the guys that have superstar quarterbacks, they're having to throw into these defenses that are dropping, 6-7 DBs and trying to make it really, really difficult to throw efficiently, constantly. I mean, I think we are in kind of a landscape where it's not that the quarterback's not the most important position. It's still clearly, but it's having an elite quarterback isn't such a prerequisite as it always has been. It's a little bit neutralized. And if you have a great defense and those other things, maybe you can figure it out. But yeah, it's funny. I still believe all that. And yet JJ McCarthy was still terrible because I just think he's that bad. I just think he's really, really awful.
Well, and Max Brosmer. So there was a part of it that was like, I mean, did the system fail last year? But I like you said, it's like, it's not Occam's razor, but I think that both JJ McCarthy and Max Brosmer really are just that bad. Like, I don't think that it was like the whole system fell apart. Also, there were a ton of offensive line injuries. So like part of the whole JJ McCarthy, my belief in him was they had the Vikings upgraded their offensive line in a huge way going into last year. So I was like, all right, they're going to have this awesome offensive line. And then everybody got hurt. So it was like, it didn't matter that they had upgraded their offensive line because
they replaced all three of the interiors last year. Like they look like they were going to have a great interior offensive line. And then no one was hurt. Everyone was hurt.
So there were aspects of it getting unlucky also, but do you think we'll get into the football talk here? First of all, I want to shout out Shady Advice, who was my guest on the Wednesday show last week, had a big MLB day yesterday, the first day that he had the flannel set, which I am not wearing because I couldn't find it before the show. But that is one. I actually didn't see what he won, but for him to comment on it, had to be like $100,000+ because he's just the DFS goat. Good to see you all in chat. But I want to hear your thought. Okay, I sent Gretch a list of questions that I wanted to talk about, and I'm already going to give him the first question is going to be one that I did not put on that list just because we brought up JJ McCarthy. Do you think there's any chance that he beats out Kyler Murray? Like what do you put the odds at of, because like they're talking about it like it's a real competition. And I'm, as somebody who's drafted a lot of Kyler Murray, I'm like slightly nervous, but not really nervous. So I'm curious your thoughts on like, have you given any thought to this? What do you think the odds
are? I have. Yeah. Okay. No, it's a good question. Do I think there's any chance? I think there's like, I'm like weirdly probabilistic about things, and so I think there's always chances of different things, but I would cap this one very low. I think, and I was reading back to some of the stealing signal stuff that I had in season. I don't know why I got back on into something from in season. I think somebody sent it to me or something, but I was looking at something about McCarthy from, I don't know, somewhere close to mid-season, and I was kind of just letting the guy have it, unfortunately, but I watch all the games from all the teams every week and write about them for stealing signals. And a lot of that stuff from the in-season, the actual feel of it is really helpful because in the off-season, everything kind of gets reduced down to the full season number and the data. And people are like, yeah, his data was really bad, but here are some other players that maybe had bad, first years and then were able to rebound. I think it's really relevant that his data was really bad with Justin Jefferson, with Jordan Addison, with TJ Hawkinson, with some of these other guys.
Jalen Naylor just signed a big contract. I mean,
yeah. People like don't even want to like think that TJ Hawkinson's completely dust. Don't even want to draft him anymore. And I'm like, dude, I mean, this is a former first round tight end that was really good a couple years ago before an ACL tear. And yeah, like his yards per out run cratered last year. You know who else did? Justin Jefferson, who had been over 2.5 every year of his career, and then last year was at like 1.84 or something. And like that's 1.88. I have that's. He was 2.5 or better 5 straight years to start his career. Then he's 1.88 in the middle of his prime. I'm not blaming Justin Jefferson for that. That's a JJ McCarthy stat to me. Like the fact that he went, more than half a yard per route worse than in his worst season of his first 5 years, including his rookie year, is not a Justin Jefferson stat at all. I watched the games. Like he would be wide open. It's a thing where like he's still earning the volume. And the throws are late. They're all over the place. You can see it even in his body language, how mad he is. Like to get yards per route, you need somebody who, when you get open and the route is to you and the throw is your way, gets you the ball. And like he's miserable out there playing with JJ McCarthy last year. When they got him back on the field, McCarthy, late in the year, they were able to find some success from some of the big tight end formations, and specifically throwing to like ancillary tight ends. I remember Josh Oliver catching a couple tight ends or touchdowns. A couple of the other like secondary tight ends, they were like getting open into space. I can't remember who else. Did they have Johnny Munt last year?
Yeah, Johnny Munt.
The first couple games that McCarthy was back, I feel like he hit on some stuff like. And then people were like, look, McCarthy had some good numbers. And I was like, he had some good numbers because O'Connell is dialing up some stuff to make anything work with him right now. If he can't throw to Justin Jefferson when Justin Jefferson's wide open, he cannot run an NFL offense. Like it's full stop. Like it's too difficult in the modern NFL against the secondaries that we're facing and everything. If we have to run leak plays to our second tight end to make his stats look efficient, that's not going to work. I mean, it can't that way. I don't think that Kyler's necessarily perfect, and I don't think that he's necessarily going to be perfect. I do think this is going to be the best situation Kyler's ever been in, and that he's actually pretty interesting. It doesn't surprise me that a sharp guy like you's been taking a lot of him. I haven't been drafting a ton, as I was telling you, and probably worth telling the audience because I live in a banned state, and that's just sort of the way that it is for me in the early offseason. But Kyler's a guy I would be taking plenty of right now. I'd be making that bet because I do think he could have a better year than he has had over the last several years in Arizona. And certainly, obviously was hurt last year and those things. There's people that think that Kyler really can't do much because he hasn't been able to get like his receivers going. But you go back early in his career, he was good with DeAndre Hopkins. Like AJ Green had a little bit of a rebound with Kyler for a stretch there. I think there are some things that he can do. I'm legitimately concerned about the height and just throwing over the middle and some of that stuff. But I think O'Connell can scheme up enough stuff that I don't know. I'm intrigued by the Kyler to Minnesota thing. I feel pretty confident that if McCarthy plays, he'll play himself out of a job again. I mean, I don't think it's impossible that he can improve or anything. I do think people don't realize how bad he was. One of the ways that Sean Siegel, my Stealing Bananas co-host, put it late last year was we were talking about some other players and somebody compared him to Zach Wilson or something. And he was like, oh, he's meaningfully worse than Zach Wilson. Like that's the scale that we're on right now, I think.
It was to the point. I mean, you talked about like the dip in numbers for Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison and they had Adam Thielen for a while also. And it felt to me like those guys, they weren't helping him with drops. Like uncharacteristically, there were drops from some of those top receivers. But I think that's what happens when like you just like when the quarterback can't hit you in stride and like you just don't have those reps. It's like the rare time the quarterback does throw you a good ball, like you're less likely to catch it because you're not in rhythm. You're not expecting it. I don't know. I think that there was a little bit of like snowball effect going on with Jake McCarthy was so bad.
When I was reading whatever I wrote last year about him, I had a similar take at some point during Stealing Signals. It feels a little bit like trying to fit a narrative, or something to blame the receivers for dropping balls right on their hands. But I certainly was like feeling similar where like some of the plays with some of these guys are coming out of a break and it's like, oh, the ball's on me. And you get a little jumpy. There's a little bit like people say there's two different types of drops. And obviously one of them is like, the concentration drop. And it's like, maybe that's when the concentration drops come in is when, again, you're like expecting to have to like dive back some direction, and then the ball's right on me, but you're kind of you lose that a little bit. The other one is just the physical drop where it's sort of same thing. Maybe you're a little tighter, you're not in rhythm, like you were saying. I mean, both of them can probably be impacted a little bit by just not having the consistency and the timing and all of that stuff. And then when a good throw is there, I don't know. I felt the same way. I always remember people would put it on Twitter and be like, "Oh, you're going to put this on JJ McCarthy?" And it's like a really bad job. I'm like, yeah, I will. I absolutely will find a way to put that on him because he's terrible.
So we are going to do drafts eventually, but I want to start with some of these questions that I just sent these to Gretch like just before we started. But I figured these are some topics that are on my mind, and I feel like you're a good guy to talk through this with. Also, like you're not doing as much content right now as usual. I mean, you dropped off of ship chasing. I was kind of looking for some of your content, and you actually in your latest newsletter, you mentioned that it's because you're having seasonal allergies, so you're just not feeling up for doing content, which I've been going through. I haven't done that much content. I just started doing it in this off season, like since the Super Bowl, because I've been sick, I've been traveling, just like a whole list of things, and so both kind of getting back into content now. So I know you're getting, you're just getting back into the swing of things with content, and you haven't done a ton of drafts, so I'm not sure how deeply you've thought about some of these topics, but I figured you're still, you're always thinking about football, so you're a good guy to talk about this stuff.
Right after the season, I wrote a ton in January and February and March, and then I've taken like 2 months almost entirely off. I coached my daughter's softball team again this year. I've written about that and talked about that on the pod before, but it's a great caveat for anyone who's like really plugged in. I might miss something that, I haven't read all the latest coach speak index blurbs and things like that. So this is me shooting from the hip a little bit.
Well, we got the question from All Day. Hello, fellas. I'm confused on the Bucky news. Is he expected to miss a few weeks? And now the quote was from Todd Bowles. We expect Bucky Irving back sometime in the summer or the fall. I watched some of Carrane's content where he was kind of saying like he thinks he was just being goofy, and I have not actually listened to the clip. I don't know if you have, but do you have any thought on this? Are you concerned about Bucky? Are you moving up anybody else? What are your thoughts here?
I saw something later that was from Schefter, I think, that said they're expecting him by training camp.
That's right. Yeah, they did say that. Yeah.
So I mean, I would take it probably the way that Carrane was saying. Not just because we're in a dynasty league together where you shared this quote in.
Oh, that's right. And you have Bucky
Irving in the text thread, and I was like, Neil, delete that. Bucky Irving's on the block. No, I mean, I'm concerned though. I'm concerned. He had a tough year last year. There was one of the things with Bucky about last year, and again, like I said, it's probably nothing, but I do kind of try to weigh in all the different probabilities and risks and things. And one of the things with Bucky was when he was hurt last year, he had some really weird like tweets, some I believe some fairly dark stuff, if I can recall, that I was like, oh man, he doesn't seem perfect, to be blunt, like perfectly mentally healthy in some of those things, which is, that's tough. I know it's really tough on a lot of players when they get injured and they're out, and there's a lot of different things, but like how that can manifest
consensus. I mean, I don't think it's just you. Like, I think that has been like the general consensus that there were some like mental health things going on with Bucky.
Yeah. And so just in terms of what that could mean as far as how things could materialize and the other factors here, the acquisition of Kenneth Gainwell, who is, I mean, I think very much a safety type of signing. Like it's like, dude, this guy can do everything. We can play him everywhere. In your question, you're like, what, like, are you concerned about Bucky? And then you asked, on this document, Kenneth Gainwell or Sean Tucker. I think it's obviously a rise for both. Is kind of the cheap way to say it, but they've been hesitant to use Tucker as a receiver as much. And in all the different phases, I think Tucker would get a lot more rushing work and would be a lot more interesting if Bucky were out because of injury or any other reason. But I think Gainwell's the one that, I mean, he's your veteran that just had a really good year last year, kind of showed that he can run and do everything. I remember when he was coming out, you were talking about the Carrane stuff. I was still doing ship chasing then. Carrane really loved the profile. He's one of the people I pay attention to the most with the prospect stuff. Really loved the Gainwell profile in terms of the receiving and the workhorse and like being able to do all of it, the rusher and the receiver. And he never really got the opportunity with the Eagles to do it all. But I think you saw last year with Pittsburgh that he could take on a little bit more of the rushing work when he needed to and be a 3-down guy and handle all the different phases, and has always been playing in the pass game. Like that's what he was doing with the Eagles. He didn't catch as many balls as like to make him super fantasy relevant with the Eagles because no one does, because it's more of a Jalen Hurts issue in terms of the mobility and how that manifests for receiving. But then as soon as he got with an Aaron Rodgers, he was like, hey, I don't want to throw the ball downfield anymore. I want to check down to my running back constantly. Gainwell had a ton of receptions last year. That was fantastic. And I do think, the rushing and all of that can be enough in addition that Gainwell is to me the one that would be really exciting in a scenario where Bucky, but where Bucky's not, playing. But I'm sort of two minds about it. It's not great to hear that the shoulder's still bothering him, and shoulders are the things that can linger over multiple years from running backs. I mean, it kind of was an issue for Dalvin Cook over multiple years, and some of those other guys have had the problems. At the same time, I would have to imagine that we will see him back at some point, Schefter coming out and clarifying after this quote, they expect him for training camp. Like, it does seem like we're going to get, and I still think Bucky's an incredibly talented player. This is a guy that I was like really, really in on as a rookie. The evasion rates and stuff in college were insane. And then what he was able to do his rookie year was really, really strong. Getting him healthy and back out there, I think he would be easily the lead back and the most productive back. But it is concerning to have guys like Gainwell and Tucker both on the roster behind him, alongside him, however you want to say that, when there are these other issues popping up.
A lot of people have described he's kind of getting squeezed on both ends, whereas Gainwell is taking a lot of the passing game work, and then you've got Sean Tucker taking the goal line work. So it's like, what is, even if we really believe in Bucky's talent, like he's just getting a lot of those opportunities that lead to fantasy points. So it's a little bit of a I was super bullish in like pre-draft stuff. I was like, people are taking him, late third round. I think he should be going at like the 2-3 turn. I was really bullish on Bucky, and then they signed Kenneth Gainwell, and it's like, I don't know about that. And now the injury is much more a bigger concern than I had thought it was. So
I would even say he's getting squeezed on like both ends in another way, which is, I mean, definitely that, like that. We always talk about it from that, but not even just the usage, but just sort of like the dependability or what you get out of your backs. Like Tucker is this sort of upside skill level guy where he can, I mean, ultimately, like it's so funny. Sean Tucker, I remember when he had another huge game last year, I was writing about it in Signals, and I was like, this dude's like never played 50% snaps in a game. Can you imagine if he ever does? Because they basically, I'm going to go look it up and give you an actual stat, but they basically have only given him run when he's like already going off in a game. And then he goes off for he played 44% of the snaps in the game last year where he had 100 yards and 2 touchdowns rushing, and then also a receiving TD. And then 38% of the snaps the year prior when he had the infamous game in New Orleans where he had over like almost 200 total yards and 2 touchdowns in that one. Those are his 2 career highs. He's never had more than 45% of the offensive snaps in a game. And he's had these 2 games that were just monster fantasy games the last 2 years. And they didn't even respond to either of those by being like, oh, maybe we should let him play a little more. They unleash him a little when he's going. But anyway, the point as far as how it impacts Bucky is if Tucker has a game like that or a couple games like that, that's not great in terms of like having another player on the roster that can have such a high ceiling. And then the dependability would be the other side of it. That, I mean, Kenneth Gainwell is like you said, when he gets signed, it's not just that he can play the pass game. It's this like dependability thing where like Bucky's been hurt. I'm worried about I mentioned sort of the mental health stuff and some of the dependability stuff. Kenneth Gainwell was not the guy you want on the roster if that's the case. Like Rachaad White's also in that, but he's not talented enough for me to be like super concerned. I'm like, if Bucky's good to go, he'll be good to go over White. I don't know that Gainwell's also talented in addition to being, dependable in all phases and all of that stuff. So he's squeezed a lot of ways. It's really hard to be like, it feels like Bucky now has to thread a needle a little bit in a way that you don't really want from your early running backs.
Gainwell is someone that like, I look at my exposures right now and I think I'm close to the field. I actually don't know exactly where I am, but I'm like, I know that I want more Kenneth Gainwell. But I made a list of running backs that go in that range, and I feel that way about a number of running backs in that range. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. But yeah, Gainwell to me seems like a pretty strong like floor ceiling combo. But we'll get back to Gainwell when we get to the list at the end. The second point here may have resolved. I actually haven't had a chance to read like what happened. Josh Jacobs apparently was released from custody. I don't know if you have, if you read what happened there. I think I read that he could still, they haven't decided what to charge him with yet, and there's more information coming. So my take is like, or my understanding is, Josh Jacobs' legal lawyers said that they have information that they haven't shared yet with the police, and that might change things. And now they're saying, like, we think there's more information coming that might be material, so we don't really know what to charge him with yet. So I don't really know what to make of the Josh Jacobs situation right now. It kind of feels like a big up in the air situation, but he had been going like early to mid third round. And he has, I've seen him go as late as like the 4 or 5 turn. I don't know that I've seen him go later than that. Do you have any takes on Josh Jacobs, or is it just kind of a hold off for now, or should we be jamming him? What are your thoughts on Josh Jacobs?
Probably to a fault. My response to these things is usually to hold off and not want to be building. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, I can get great ADP value on it. And probably you can. But I always think about things in terms of like this framework of small miss, small hit, big hit. Trying to identify players that are more small miss, big hit and then avoid players that are small hit, big miss. I think Jacobs as a player was already like, when you talk about like workhorse running backs that aren't super explosive like him the last few years, like he already to me has been a little bit more of a small hit type of a pick for best ball. I get it. I totally understand it. Like the volume is there as a guy who's had 260 touches every year of his career for 7 straight years. What was that? We got late ADP value on Mixon last year. Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, and then Mixon ends up not even playing. Like, this becomes a potential big miss situation that you can say, like, when it hits, you're like, oh yeah, I got 2 rounds of ADP value. If it turns out that like this is like a really serious thing, like setting aside the actual like obviously real world implications on the human beings involved, but like the actual like the impact on fantasy football, if this becomes a real thing, like it very much could be a thing where he just isn't playing all season. Like that has happened absolutely, and can happen in these situations. I probably overreacted in a similar situation with Quinshon Judkins last year, where there's a lot of people that were taking the discount, and I was like, I just don't know how this works out, and it worked out for him. He ended up playing, and that ended up being a non-issue. I guess, but I
was on the same side as you all of last offseason, and to their credit, the sidekick kept on wanting me to take Quinshon Judkins. Like I think he was the player that I passed on the most in the sidekick, because there were multiple times where it was like, he's falling a little bit, but then like, he wasn't with the team, and that was a concern. And then we don't need to rehash the whole Quinshon Judkins thing, but like he wasn't with the team until like they started playing, and then he just like immediately was able to play, and the whole thing shocked me. But
truly one of the craziest things, because that was the big thing for me too, was that, I mean, I know I remember talking to Sacrilegious, and I can't remember why, what he had, because you mentioned the sidekick, obviously the leg up guys, and I can't remember, he had some really good intel on that, but one of the things that I thought, even the good intel that like Judkins wasn't going to be like charged, or it wasn't going to be a huge issue, but my whole issue was what you said, was like, he's now missed the entire offseason program. He's missed the preseason games. And like, they also took Dylan Sampson reasonably high. And I was like, I mean, there's a decent chance that Dylan Sampson's just the better player. I do think part of it is like Judkins is like meaningfully better than Sampson. And we don't know that necessarily going in, but that's sort of how it played out when they got him in camp. And that's why they took him higher. Obviously they took him in the high 2nd round and everything, but it does happen where teams draft 2 backs, and then, I mean, the Packers drafted both Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones famously the same year. And it was like, oh no, Aaron Jones is better just like from day one. And everyone kind of thought that he was. Those things can certainly happen. But anyway, the Judkins thing, like you said, we don't need to rehash the whole thing, but it was shocking to me that the guy missed as a rookie everything, and then was a workhorse like a couple weeks into the year.
Week 1, here's what happened. Week 1, they played the Bengals, who like anybody can run on the Bengals, except for apparently Jerome Ford and Dylan Sampson ran for like 2.9 yards per carry or something. I don't remember the number, but it was like ridiculously bad rushing against the Bengals.
And Sampson caught like 8 passes. I was streaming him in like PPR, and I was like, ooh, I got a nice start because he caught all these passes.
He had a couple like really strong weeks, but yeah, it was not. I drafted a ton of both Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford. So that was a pretty big miss on my part. While I ended up overweight on Judkins, thanks to the sidekick, and eventually you just kind of give in and say, okay, fine, I'll take him this time. But yeah,
I ended up drafting a decent amount of him, probably because of the sidekick as well. For best ball, I didn't take him anywhere else, and I was pretty much like out. But anyway, back to the Jacobs thing. When you talk about a guy who's already, a 28-year-old back who's been a workhorse, I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh, they like to kind of mock the work, the like, oh, he's going to break down thing, which I do think is very mockable. I think being a workhorse is a skill. I think when you look at collegiate profiles, you do actually want to see guys that have shown an ability to handle volume. That was one of the knocks on like Ezekiel Elliott coming out. People were like, he took so there's a lot of tread on those tires coming out of college. Like, dude, this guy's still like 21 years old because he got a ton of touches at Ohio State. And then he just went on to a career where he got a ton of touches like for a lot of years in Dallas. And, you know, I mean, like that's when you're a workhorse, you tend to do that. And so the fact that Josh Jacobs has had 260 plus touches every year for 7 straight years probably shouldn't be seen as like some massive negative or anything. Like that's a good thing. That's why the Packers went out and signed him and have continued to use him as a workhorse. Having said that, when you're 28 and you've done that for 7 years, there is an element of like, you can't do this forever. And this is a somewhat less explosive player, you know, 4 yards per carry last year. A couple of years prior, when he was 25, he had a 3.5 yards per carry. He's a career 4.2 guy. A lot of the best backs in the league that get a ton of work or more, you know, you're hoping you're pushing 4.5 or more over this type of volume. Obviously, yards per carry is not like the only stat that matters, but Jacobs, we all kind of know, is a more of an efficiency, less of an efficiency player, more of a volume player. And if you're already working with that kind of a profile, and then I get into this type of a risk element outside of that, I'm like, I don't think of this guy as one that if I miss out on drafting him, that I'm going to get buried. Like, I don't think he's that type of a big hit. And so I'm just not drafting him right now. If I want to like get exposure to him later, because I feel like I have to, even if his cost goes back up, because it clears up so much, then, you know, I'll do that later. Like, but that's the way, I mean, that's just the way that I would navigate that. I don't think a couple rounds of ADP gap is like worth what I see as big miss and big hit, different risk profiles. That's the range, the things that I'm thinking of is sort of the tail risks on both sides. Whether I get smashed for a breakout season that I didn't have exposure to, or I get buried by a total 0 season that I do have too much exposure to. I mean, those are the things, rather than like, oh, hey, I got some CLV from round 5 to round 3. I just don't, that's not the way that I think about best ball and fantasy football in general, personally. So I would be out on this in May and in June. And, you know, if I need to get exposure to it in August, then I'll think about it then.
Is there a point? I mean, in May, like if he's going in the 6th round, if you're doing a draft, he shows up in the 6th round, where his ADP is, say, I don't actually know where his ADP is right now, but let's say it's 48 is his ADP, and he falls to you at like 65. At that point, are you willing to like buy the dip, you know, if he falls enough in like one singular draft and he's consistently going somewhere else? Or are you just like, there's not a point, you know, where I would draft? Obviously there's points for everybody, or not everybody, but
yeah, that's a very best ball specific question. And I do end up tending to be more redraft mindset. When you first said that, I was like, no, I wouldn't take him in the 6. It still seems too rich, because if something else came out that was aggressive, it could easily drop his price below the 6. The 6 is still a pretty aggressive price for, like, if it turned out that he was definitely going to get suspended, or you know, somebody in the chat's talking about guys that could be signed. If Green Bay goes out and signs a back and signals that they're worried or something, that I think his ADP could drop meaningfully.
Sure.
Or just to the 6th. And so I wouldn't even think that I have this great price. So I was thinking, like, you know, 8th to 10th or something. Like, then it would be like, yeah, he's fallen a ton. It's probably never going to fall that far. But if he fell that far, you'd be like, okay, I'd take him. But then, you know, when you say the, you know, in one singular draft thing, I do kind of snap back to, yeah, I mean, if you're playing best ball, if you're drafting hundreds of teams, like, sure, like, you know, if you want to take him in one singular draft in the 6th round, I can totally understand that.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because that's me, because I'm drafting hundreds of teams, and I'm like, I would like, if he's going at 48 consistently, he falls to me at 65, like, that's where I'm like, all right, I'll take the fall here, I'll get the, you know, rare combo, get the nice value. But that's also because I'm doing hundreds of best ball drafts. So it is kind of a different conversation depending on how many drafts you're doing, depending on the format, all of that. Yeah, it's a good point. The next question, and this has come up a lot, because they come up for me a lot, I should say. The sidekick often will recommend Omar Cooper to me, and I think I'm just super excited about Travis Hunter, so I often like that. That's one of the rare spots that I will IKB off of Omar Cooper and onto Travis Hunter, but I might be totally wrong there. It has happened before. Am I not excited enough about Omar Cooper? Who do you prefer for best ball specifically between Travis Hunter and Omar Cooper?
I mean, I guess I think Omar. Well, I would want exposure to both of them for sure.
Right.
I think it's fun to have it's fun to have these kinds of discussions about two players that you're interested in, right? Obviously, but I think the broad answer would be I'd probably want to mix it up if I was drafting a lot of teams and take both. Oh, I think Omar Cooper, if you're asking like the fact that you're not taking much of him is maybe a mistake. I think, yeah, potentially.
Oh, I'm taking a lot. To be clear, I've got a lot of Omar Cooper.
Okay.
It's just one that it's like, I would probably have 40% if I took him every time the sidekick tells me to. And instead I'm like, a lot of that time I'm taking Travis Hunter. And the sidekick likes both of them. So I don't want to make this like a, me versus the sidekick type of thing. It's just like, sure. I feel like I'm more excited about Travis Hunter. When I get to click Travis Hunter, that excites me more. But I think that's probably just because I don't watch college football and like haven't like, wrapped my head around what Omar Cooper is yet. So are you, do you think Omar Cooper has a shot to be really good? And I think it's because he's on the Jets too. It's part of it for me. It's like, I'm always, it's tough to get me excited about a Jets player. But do you think I should be more excited about Omar Cooper than I am? He goes around pick 140 to 150.
I think he's a first round receiver that goes to a depth chart that I think has plenty of opportunity for him to excel. Is he perfect as a prospect? No, not necessarily. I like that he earned volume from early in his career and was consistent at that, like in terms of like targets per route. And then the yards per route were good. It was better in the years where he had a little bit more like yards per target efficiency. Those are kind of the component parts of yards per route run, targets per route, yards per target. And he did it at like deep ADOTs early in his career, and then he had a lower ADOT in his final season. Did it at some different depths. It was a little bit more volume based his last year at a lower ADOT. Those are like some of the elements that I think are interesting for a guy that. And then he was good ball in hand, forced a lot of missed tackles, good evasion rate, some of that stuff. So I think there's some like component parts to like his profile. Like he can do things at different depths. He can do some things with the ball in his hand, probably that make him interesting with the first round draft capital, trading back into the first round to get him. Adonai Mitchell is really good at earning volume. When you talk about those, those component parts to yards per route run, his targets per route are good. He gets open. He's not an efficient player. I mean, I think we know that at this point. He really struggled his first year with the like yards per target type efficiency. And then last year after the trade, the Jets threw him out there. They got him a lot of volume at times. And again, really low yards per target for a really aggressive targets per route run. He was about 25% as a rookie on limited routes. And then he was about 23% last year targets per route. Both are really strong numbers. And he was more of he only ran 310 routes, but in some of the smaller route samples, like you see this with like Luther Burden, you do have to wonder if the per route stuff is juiced a little bit by situational usage. This was my concern with Marvin Mims last year, and I talked about it constantly. And when people asked me, I remember being on Fantasy Life Pod with Dwayne McFarland, and he asked me who I thought was the most overpriced player, and I picked Marvin Mims specifically because people were riding the 2.5-ish yards per route run from the year prior, and I was like, he only ran like 200 routes. And it's really meaningful that those routes were mostly swing routes and deep shots. He didn't run any of the intermediate stuff. And that 200 can't scale to 400 without adding more variety to what you're running, because you can't run that many swing routes and deep shots in football. It's not how the sport works. He would have to go win in different ways than we've seen him win. We haven't even seen him run a lot of like in-breaking and out-breaking and curl routes and these like all these intermediate routes. And I'm not convinced that the fact that he's not even ran them, that he's a 2.5 yards per route run guy if he does run them. So the fact that he was a 2.5 yards per route run guy, but only 200 routes was a massive red flag, the 200 routes. And anyway, for Mitchell, it's a little different because when he went to the Jets, that was my concern about Mitchell's rookie year. They only seem to play him in like situations where they might want to like isolate him or go to him. He only ran 200 routes for the Colts as a rookie. Last year, he was like an every down player for the Jets and was still earning a lot of routes. So I think this guy's really good at creating separation, drawing targets, which is a bit of a problem for Cooper, is the point I'm getting at. Like, it is target competition, but if Mitchell continues to be a really inefficient player, his yards per route run's been about 1.5 both years, despite the really strong targets per route, because the yards per target meaningfully poor. He's dropping balls. He's not generating a lot of like yards after the catch or those types of things. I mean, I think that's why they went out and got Omar Cooper, frankly, and they really like him. You have Garrett Wilson, obviously. I think Garrett Wilson is going to get a lot of the volume. I thought Geno Smith played really poorly for the Raiders last year. I'm willing to kind of put some of that maybe on the system and the situation and hoping that we're going to get things a little bit better this year. But Omar Cooper to me is in a situation, and I really like Kenyon Sadiq, who they add, and obviously they have Mason Taylor. I think the tight ends are going to be involved here. I think the running backs are going to be involved here. You have Breece Hall, you have both of the backups with Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis. There's a decent, I don't know. I guess I don't think it's a completely clear runway for him in terms of target competition, but I do think, for a first round receiver landing here, it's not bad. If Omar Cooper's good, he can get a lot of early volume is kind of the way that I'm seeing it. That's why I'm emphasizing sort of some of the Mitchell stuff so much. He seems to be the biggest sort of roadblock. If Cooper's out there with Garrett Wilson when they do the multi-tight end sets with Mason Taylor and Sadiq, and I guess I think he will be, because I think Adonai Mitchell is just not consistent enough, and they're not going to think that he's consistent enough. And Omar Cooper sort of is as a prospect. He does all the different things that you want. And so I think he's kind of working off of Garrett Wilson. I do think Garrett Wilson's probably looking like he might have one of the better seasons of his career. He's had such a horrible run of quarterback play and everything. And it is unfortunate as, Geno is not like the greatest thing in the world and all that. My issue with Geno is typically that he's like more of a one read guy. He can't get through his progressions. But if you're a one read guy, like Garrett Wilson's like, if I can get a one read quarterback who can throw accurately, that would be a huge upgrade for me. What I've had to play with so far in my career. So if he can go get open and Geno Smith can throw him the ball, that would be great. I do think it's a positive for Garrett Wilson. And then if you're the sort of the most consistent number two, especially as the season progresses, like that rookie late season upside, working off of a legit number one is usually a pretty favorable spot, I think, for a later round, receiver target. I think that's what Cooper's going to be. I think he's going to be pretty clearly the second best option. And then Mitchell will fall in with Sadiq and with Taylor as sort of the ancillary pieces in the target share, totem pole, if you will. And so anyway, Cooper to me, it's more of a high floor play is kind of the way I'm talking about it. I think there's a lot of volume there, and I'm intrigued by that. I've always been a really big upside guy, swing for the fences, all of that. But one of the big things that's happened with the macro changes in the sport is we have lower ceilings at the wide receiver position in the last few years. I've written about this a little bit, but there's not as many like 1,300 yard, 1,400 yard, 1,500 yard receiving seasons the last couple of years. League wide offensive yardage was down meaningfully last year, despite points scored coming back up a little bit from the last couple of years, which is I wrote about this a lot during the season. I attributed it to mostly to the change in kickoff rules. Starting field position was meaningfully up, and so then you have a pretty meaningful shift in how that manifests. Just being able to starting field position across like the 30, and kickers are making bombs these days. They're making 60 yarders. You're like a couple first downs away from a field goal now. It's one of the big stats from last year was that the percent of drives in a score was up, which is, partly because it's easy to get into field goal range off these kickoff, starting field position off kickoffs being meaningfully better. And then also just the touchdown drives are shorter. And so you get this combination of it takes fewer yards to score touchdown or to score points. And then the other part that I kind of hypothesized was we had a few blowouts last year where teams seemed to pack it in a little earlier. I think with the 17th game, with the increased focus on player health and some of that stuff, that teams are more like back when we were kids, like teams played hard, like all 17, all 17 games. We talked about garbage time, all that stuff. And I think it makes sense that they pack it in a little bit more now, and they live for the next week a little bit. But I do think when you get into this element where it's easier to score per drive, you get better starting field position. It takes less yardage to score. It can also create the lopsided scores earlier in games and second halves of games that wind up being less fantasy interesting. Both teams are kind of running out the clock. I think that's also part of why league-wide yards per game for offenses came down meaningfully, like 10 yards per game, which is like kind of a lot. It was the lowest number in a lot of years, and that type of stuff tends to trend upward as the offenses get more and more efficient in those things. And so the point there, most of that comes off of the passing game. Obviously, we know that people are really into running backs this year. Like the rushing is a lot more of a driver on the macro level. Well, my main take there is if wide receiver ceiling is rarer, there's only a couple guys hitting 1,300 yards in those things. The types of guys that I can bet on for a little bit more of like a floor element to the wide receiver production, which I'm defining more as like target volume. Like go back to the old school of like, if you can get 120 targets or whatever, and you can catch 80 balls and you can get close to 1,000 yards, like that's a pretty meaningful thing in best ball, just to get those guys on your roster in a league where there's, again, not that many guys hitting 1,200, 1,300 yards. I just want to bet on the dudes that are going to have 1,000 yards in a season. So anyway, Cooper being that type of rookie to me that's stepping into a spot where he could get a meaningful amount of volume and a meaningful, certainly I think a meaningful amount of routes right away is the big gap to me. I'm into the Travis Hunter play, but like everything I'm saying about Cooper, I think it's pretty obvious that the counter of that coin is what's going to happen with Travis Hunter's routes. Right. What's going to happen? You're playing a dangerous game there, but you're playing for spike week potential, which is also very much something worth betting on. We love the talent. I love the talent. I want to be on a Travis Hunter, but it's a different side of the coin. He might only have like 60 targets this year. I mean, there's a lot of ways this season could go for him. So I'm thinking a little bit more, especially with later round receivers in like, I want to hit singles rather than I need to hit home runs. I need to hit like Pierre, but Omar Cooper could be a home run. It sounds like. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I mean, he could be more than a single too. So he's pretty exciting to me.
I think that you did your job. Like, I think that I brought this up wanting you to convince me that to get excited about Omar Cooper. I think just because he's on the Jets and because I've never seen him play before, it's easier for me to get excited about Travis Hunter. But I think I'm opening my third eye, and I should have probably just been clicking the top of the sidekick the whole time on Omar Cooper, because you still get a fair amount of Travis Hunter, even if you take Omar Cooper first. But yeah, I think you did your job of talking me into to taking some more Omar Cooper. I'm going to move on to the next question, which is, I'm curious your thoughts on AJ Brown. So AJ Brown currently goes around ADP 27 on Underdog. We're less than a week away from him potentially being traded to the Patriots. I have stated my opinion on this situation many times already. But I don't want to tell you what it is, because I just want to hear your thoughts without having heard my expressed opinion on AJ Brown. Because I think I've heard sharp people have kind of a wide range of opinions here, but what are your thoughts on AJ Brown?
I have an entrenched opinion. So can you give me, I just want your Cliff's notes. Are you in or out?
I'm in. I'm very in on AJ Brown.
Yeah.
Are you out?
No, I'm hard in.
Oh, okay. We're on the same. Okay, good.
Yeah. I AJ Brown was one of the guys that was like one of my brand guys when I was kind of getting bigger in the industry. When I was at CBS, like everyone knew me as the guy who was really into AJ Brown early in his career and talking him up. And I had some battles with Heath Cummings, I remember back in the day at CBS, and he wasn't necessarily as into Brown, or he was concerned about, I think, some regression after the rookie year. And I did a lot of work at CBS at the time going into that second season. Like, he was so efficient, he's going to get more volume. Like, the regression isn't a concern kind of stuff. And anyway, it worked out. His second year was really good. Yeah. AJ Brown was another one of those guys like Justin Jefferson, 2.5 plus yards per route every season of his career. This is the PFF definition of yards per route, which a lot of people use fancy points. They have a little bit more of a restrictive type of route, which increases the scale for any per route run stat, because you're talking about the denominator. I'm using the PFF numbers, which is going to lower it. So 2.5 yards per route run in PFF is really strong. Just to clarify, all six of his first seasons until last year. And then even last year, last year was like a disaster for AJ Brown, and he still was over 2 yards per route run, which is incredible. Like, 2 yards per route run is good. For your disaster season to be a 2.06 yards per route run season, again, it just speaks to the talent this guy has. I think he is AJ Brown to me has always been in the like Terrell Owens tier. And it doesn't surprise me that people that he wants to go play somewhere. He talked a little bit about like his own personal greatness, and people were like, "Oh, why don't you put the team first?" He's like, "Dude, I've only played for the Titans with Derrick Henry and now the Eagles with Saquon, and like these very run focused offenses. I just want to have one season in my career where I can run like enough routes that I can go out and like do some awesome stuff. And then people like talk about me on the same tier as Terrell Owens, and people won't go, well, he's not quite that good. He is that good. He's just never really gotten that opportunity. One of the early stats about him that I loved from that rookie year, and I've always remembered it, pretty simple cutoffs, but this was a cohort that I had pulled together after his rookie year. with an A dot of a certain depth. I can't remember what it was, but it was meaningfully higher than average. The wide receiver average is about 11. I think he had an A dot of like 14 his rookie year. I think I'd probably said higher than 13 or something, like at least 2 yards higher than the wide receiver average. So you're a vertical weapon to some degree, and you got volume. So at least like 75 targets or whatever it was. And then the third thing was a yak minimum. So yak is inversely correlated to A dot. And so when you're a vertical receiver, oftentimes those guys are getting a lot of their yardage after the catch. The ability to be a downfield receiver who's making a lot of plays vertically and adding, I think it was a minimum of like 400 yards after the catch over the course of a season, which is a solid amount. Yeah, it turns a 1,200 yard receiver to 1,600 yards. Like that's a big deal. AJ Brown was, as a rookie, those are the only limitations. That's not like, I don't think it's too much like P hacking or whatever you want to call it, where you're like just trying to like create a cohort that looks good. Like those are all very primary. Like this is just what the receiver is. He's a vertical receiver and he can do stuff after the catch, and he got some volume. As a rookie, the only other guys in the previous 10 or 15 years or something that had those characteristics. And I don't know that he's necessarily fallen into it much more the rest of his year because his ADOT has come down since then. But it was like prime seasons from Julio Jones, prime seasons from Terrell Owens. There was some Randy Moss in there. There was Calvin Johnson in there, I remember. There were some not as big and physical receivers, but also deep threats that could do stuff with the ball in the hand, like Tyreek Hill and Deshaun Jackson. But it was basically just elite players that were able to both be these vertical threats. And that's what Brown does. If you've watched the Eagles the last few years, he still has it. Like they throw up to him in one-on-one coverage and he wins like constantly. And then also he's like unstoppable on any kind of, in breaking route after the catch or whatever. So anyway, I still think AJ Brown has all the tools in the toolbox. I don't see last year as regression. I see it as Jalen Hurts and scheme and like general issues for the Eagles. I think that was an Eagles offense problem. I think there's going to be a lot more of that going forward in a world where defenses are winning a little bit and are really strong. And I wrote a piece when I was writing a lot of this stuff in January, February, and March. One of my big takeaways from the season, I like to write some macro stuff right after the year. I called it like scheme is more important than ever. And I do think we're in a situation, start talking about the 12 and 13 personnel and some of that stuff. I do think we're in a situation where putting players in the best position to succeed is a massive edge right now in the NFL. Like Mike McDonald was doing that. He was using the multi-tight end sets offensively to set up very favorable passing situations for Darnold. Defensively, they were matching multi-tight end sets with nickel and not base at the highest rate in the league, like over 80%. And there was only like one or two other teams that were even close to that. And that became the whole talking point. The Seahawks were already ahead of the curve doing that from week one. They were thinking about that when they drafted Nicky Manwari in the second round so that they could keep that safety on the field and be in nickel against the multi-tight end. This is something McDonald was aware of, well in advance. And McVay was able to leverage his scheme things to make the Rams one of the best teams in the league last year. I think the Eagles were not putting their players in the best positions to succeed. And I think there's also limitations there with Jalen Hurts. And people are going to look at stats in fantasy the way we always have. Like, oh, the AJ Brown regressed. He's falling off. Like, no, man, like he's not. He had a 2+ yards per out run season in a horrible situation. I think you need to think from a macro perspective in an NFL where that's a big problem. It's the same thing with Justin Jefferson for me. Justin Jefferson at the beginning of the year was going like ADP 16. I see that he's risen, but I wrote in my early offseason stuff, that's way wrong. I would be taking him in the first round. There's no way in my mind Kevin O'Connell will put up with that type of QB play again. And then they go and acquire Kyler Murray. This gets back to my answer to your earlier question. It was just like, you can't do that. You lose a locker room if you just sit with a quarterback that's playing that poorly for over multiple years. You get yourself fired. Like that's what happens. Like Zach Wilson, those kinds of things over multiple years get coaches fired. That's the way that works. I don't think O'Connell's a dumb coach. I think he was as frustrated as anybody about McCarthy last year. So my point is, there are going to be these situations where it sounds like I'm cherry picking or I'm just biased or whatever, but I'm flat out saying I don't buy the numbers. I'm willing to I don't think this player is dropping off. I don't think he's on the tail end of his career. AJ Brown is not that old. The fact that he still went over 2 yards per out run, because early in the year he was awful for the first half of the year. He was at like 1.2 or 1.3 for a stretch in yards per route. He still he rebounded to get that back over 2 yards per route run down the stretch. This guy can still play. 100% of my mind is still that player. I don't think he's as dominant as he always was, but he still has the skill set, the ball skills, and the ball in hand stuff. Like, he's not quite as athletic probably, but I memean, he's turning 29 in June. Like, this is not an old player. This is not like, he's not 32. I think we got multiple more years of AJ Brown. He's going to go and have a third act to his career now in wherever he goes. I think he's certainly getting traded. I think it's probably the Patriots, but wherever he ends up, I think it's going to be better than the Eagles. Basically, somebody's going to shell out some real capital to be able to go use him as a true number one. Like, I said for a couple years, because of the Eagles, like the way that they projected with pass volume and stuff, it was a bummer for me because I was always such an AJ Brown guy that I didn't get a B in on him when he had like a late first ADP. I didn't draft a lot of him for a couple years. And like, I get to be back in on AJ Brown this year, and I'm stoked about it. Like, I think 2-3 turn is a great spot for him.
I'm so glad to hear you say that, because I was really not sure where you were going to be on the AJ Brown thing going this year, because it is like you said, like, it looks like regression. Like, you look at the yards per route run, even though it's still really good, it is meaningfully worse than last year. And if you look at like yards after contact per catch, the rate is down. He was 8th last year. He was 8th the year prior to that. Like, he's been in that same range the past few years. I'm using fantasy points data for this, but like, the number went down, but he's still in that same range. But I'm like you in that I don't believe that it is regression. I think that it is a combination of, like, the situation was so bad. And it's kind of like we talked about with JJ McCarthy and the Vikings receivers. Like, they had some uncharacteristic drops last year. I kind of think that, like, that was like, the situation was so bad that it was kind of snowballing into, a negative thing where, like, he was not really, it didn't look to me like he was giving full effort all the time last year. And
he wasn't. 100%.
He was telling fantasy, if you have me on your fantasy team, don't play me. Like, he was being the biggest, like, diva wide receiver. And you know what I love about a diva wide receiver is they're going to sulk when they're in a situation they don't like, and they're going to rebound. They're going to prove next year that the Eagles were using him all wrong. It was the Eagles' fault. He's going to be out for blood this year.
Dude, the stuff about like first read targets and all that, like, so much of that fits with what you just said about like the diva receivers. Like, they bring in AJ Brown. AJ Brown's going to make sure to get his. That's why, I mean, even guys that aren't as talented, I always think of Jarvis Landry on this. Jarvis Landry was that dude that was like, that guy, everyone always talking about Jarvis Landry's athletic profile was not that great. And he wasn't like, he's a good route runner, but Jarvis Landry and Deontay Johnson's another one where, like, as soon as he became too much of a problem, they just got rid of him. But up until the last days of his career, that guy's like posting 25% targets per route. Because if he's in your locker room, he's telling everyone everywhere, like, you better throw me the ball every single time, to the extent that they're like, we either got to cut you or throw the ball to you every single time. Like, it's the only things that we can do. Jarvis Landry is the one that comes to mind. I don't know that he was like a locker room cancer or anything, but was like that type of guy. Like, and that's why you saw him have 160 target seasons, because it's like, I'm going to just keep telling everybody that you need to throw me the ball constantly until you do it. And then, hopefully at least make some plays. But Jarvis Landry was always so funny because he'd catch all these short passes and then like do like 8 juke moves that go nowhere and like get like 5 yards. And I don't know. I yet still would get all these targets. But when you're AJ Brown talented and you're that, like, I think it's a rebound year. I think
you go from, I want to say Jalen Hurts is 201 passing yards per game. Drake May 258 last year. AJ Brown,
and what does Drake May do? Throws a beautiful deep ball. Like,
yeah,
this is like, you're about to see, like, this is a very much a real football take, but you're about to see a mesh of two players' strengths. And that's what you want to, like, this is a total blasphemy, but when Randy Moss was having all these terrible years with the Raiders and they traded for him to the Patriots, then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, Tom Brady can throw a deep ball and Randy Moss can catch a deep ball. Guy scores 23 touchdowns. Yeah. I'm not saying he's going to score 23 touchdowns, but we're going to get reminded this year that AJ Brown can play the deep ball very well and just beast fools. And Drake May throws a really pretty deep ball. He was getting Demario Douglas and Kayshon Boutte all these long touchdowns. Like, yeah, they're gonna connect for some touchdowns.
Yeah,
like, it's gonna happen.
Yeah,
I'm pretty pumped. If he goes to the Patriots, I'm pretty pumped.
I'm glad to hear you that we're on the same page here. It has been super frustrating for me as I've drafted more than I usually draft in May with the aim of getting more AJ Brown, and I think in my rooms, I've said enough about how much I love AJ Brown that like anybody who watches my content kind of knows and won't let me get AJ Brown. It's been sort of frustrated, but I'm still well over the field, and I'm happy to hear that you are very much on AJ Brown there. I do also want to ask does this affect your view of DeVonta Smith, Mekhi Lemon? Like there were rumblings of like Eagles, I don't know if it was Eagles, I forget who said it, Eagles executive or something, was like he could be this year's JSN after, they're trying to throw out these rumors of how great DeVonta Smith could be without AJ Brown. Are you meaningfully bumping up DeVonta Smith? Now, he goes around like ADP of like 32, so like in the same range as like Chris Olave. Trying to think who else is in that range. But is he somebody you think will benefit from AJ Brown leaving in a big way? Because he's still kind of stuck in that Eagles offense where, again, Jalen Hurts threw for 201 yards per game or something last year. They had Mekhi Lemon, they had Stowers. So I'm curious your thoughts on DeVonta Smith.
Yeah, I mean, Smith is a little bit of a concern from that perspective. He did always kind of play second fiddle to AJ Brown. To me, it was always the per route data that was the best like indicator of that. It wasn't until I think maybe 2024. Yeah, 2024 was his first year over 2 yards per route. He was always really good just below there. But like I was saying, AJ Brown was always like 2.5 plus, and he's like 1.8, 1.98. And then he goes over 2. And then last year he was back down to 1.92. Always worse than Brown, which is not to say that he's bad. And a big part of that was the targets per outside of it. Like AJ Brown would get more first read targets and certainly be treated as the number one. I think DeVonta Smith will probably set a career high in targets per out this year. He'll get more of the clear like lead targets. And we always saw that for him. If Brown was ever banged up, especially like if Goddard was out, it would just consolidate on AJ Brown and DeVonta Smith. He's always been efficient. The yards per target side of things has always been good. Like, regardless of how much volume he's getting, he's turning targets into yards. His doesn't do a lot after the catch because he's a small dude, but he's catching enough of his balls. He's effective. You go back to what he did in college. Obviously, he wins the Heisman. Like I've always been a guy that production begets production. Like he does what you want. Guys that have these massive production profiles in college. The guy knows how to play ball. Like he knows how to catch a football. He knows how to put yards and stats up. I think he's a good pick. I do think the Eagles' macro concerns are still there, but they're redoing everything. They bring in Sean Mania, and they're going to do some different stuff. So when we did a Stealing Bananas a pod sometime in like February or something, we just randomly were looking through early ADP and did our favorite picks of every round. And I did AJ Brown for the third round. He was going mid third at the time, and you just told me in ADP it's a little higher than that, which doesn't surprise me. And then I did DeVonta Smith for the mid fourth. And I was like, because I don't think they're going to be on the same team. Like I've been pretty firm that I think Brown is going to get traded. And I do think once that happens that we're going to like both these guys. Like, right now they look like the two Eagles. It's weird to take an Eagles receiver in the third and another one in the fourth coming off the year they just had. But, and so anyway, you just told me an ADP for DeVonta Smith that's up in the late third. He's obviously risen as well. And yet I still think, I don't know that he's like this year's JSN. I'm going to probably write an article at some point about pattern matching. And I think we do way too much of the, like, this guy's going to be this year's this, like, and we all say we always do that. And we all still do it. I still do it all the time, but it's impossible not to, because it's an easy thing. But especially as advanced data gets better, I think we get into a thing where like, I can put in more inputs that are so similar. And I wrote in my most recent article, you referenced I haven't been writing a ton, but I wrote one last week about how like the best models we have in football have an R-squared of like, 0.6. And then there's what that means is like, 1 minus 0.6, 0.4 is considered unexplained variance. So like 40% of what is predicted, like how the inputs predict the output is unexplained by that model. 60% is explained. And anyway, what I see a lot of fantasy analysts do is they are, now that we have more and more data and more information, they can get that 60%. Like, this looks exactly like all the things that really mattered for JSN. The reason there's a 40% in all these models is you can't just like replicate the 40% with the 60%. I don't care how confident you are that the 60% of stuff that is knowable to us is the same. It's the 40% that is why JSN is what JSN was. It's go back to the long view stuff and what he was as a prospect at Ohio State. Layer in some stuff about how his rookie year was with Shane Waldron and he had the broken hand, and then he was a 21-year-old rookie, and there's some age elements there. And then he comes into year 2, and in week 7, DK Metcalf gets hurt. And from week 7 on, his yards per out run is through the roof, and he really takes off. And you see that trajectory And again, that long view element of like it matched what he was as a prospect. And then their team's decision to go and trade DK Metcalf in the offseason, which you're seeing that part of it with DeVonta Smith. They're going to go trade AJ Brown and free up that runway. That's something we can pattern match, but it doesn't mean the outcome's going to be the same by any means. I do think DeVonta Smith's a really interesting pick, but the other thing you would do is you would go, for me especially, I didn't take enough JSN last year. I took plenty, but I didn't take enough because I was worried that there wasn't going to be enough pass volume. My take last year was that they were going to be too run heavy. And if I was going to take a walk in that range, I preferred Kenneth Walker because I liked taking the running back in that range. And then they ended up doing they were too run heavy, but they were better than I thought from a team level. And they were kind of 50-50 split on the running backs workload. And then also there was just that element of JSN taking that next step from a talent perspective and being one of the top 5 receivers in the NFL, one of the top 3 last year easily. Maybe, one of the top 5 if you look from a longer timeline, but still looks like, he's an elite now. And I don't know that I like DeVonta Smith at this stage in his career, like he's going into year 6 and he's had 1 2-yard per outrun season. And it's not that he's an age 23 year 3 guy. And there's a lot of things to like about him. I just said like the positive stuff about the long view and he won a Heisman and he had the 2,000-yard season or whatever it was at Alabama. And there are a lot of similarities, but I don't want to pattern match we told ourselves JSN didn't have enough ceiling in the 3rd round because it was too run heavy of a team. And then he did. So that means that DeVonta Smith does as well. Jalen Hurts is more known than Sam Darnold was going into last year. Yeah. And that's part of the 40%.
And DeVonta Smith is also more known.
Right. And those are part of the 40% that is, you can't model all of the factors. And that is like, it's really important for people to understand and always keep like very present. There's a lot of unknowns, right? Like I sometimes speak really confidently about things. I always try to keep very like framed in my mind. There's a lot that I don't know. Anyway, DeVonta Smith was the guy that I picked as my favorite pick in the whole 4th round. He's going late 3rd. I'm happy to take some of him. I balk a little at being like really into him, or if his price continues to rise, like if it gets up after the trade, if he gets up into like the 2-3 turn range, I'm probably going to be a little concerned about the offensive environment and those things again.
Yeah, I think that is fair. Yeah, I appreciate that you speak about these things in like a range of outcome sense, as far as instead of like having hot takes. That's one of the reasons I enjoy having these conversations with you. So we're over an hour into the show. I envision
that's my fault.
I mean, no, it's been great though. Like I'm like, let's just keep rolling like this. I'm just we're not getting into a draft quite yet, but we just had a couple more. I almost want to skip the Stefon Diggs, Deebo Samuel stuff. Can you just do that one rapid fire? Do you have any opinions on like should we be taking these guys?
I haven't been following the news enough to have a strong opinion on like whether or not there's any rumblings or rumors. I thought Deebo was more concerningly like done in like what he does well. He was a little bit more, I think he's younger, but he was a little bit more there you go. He was a little bit more of a physical player throughout his prime and at his best, and it seems like he just can't play that type of style anymore. One of the issues with Deebo, if you actually like watch all the games and everything, is like we were talking about drops earlier. This guy drops the ball a lot. Like he can't, I don't know that he can catch. Like it's bad. Like there were some plays last year. He's just running some slants and he's just dropping like easy throws, like 8 yards over the middle of the field, right on his chest. He's trying to body catch and bouncing off of him. When you have that mixed with the fact that most of your production in your prime was like, short area stuff and including like running plays and it was yak and all that, and you're probably not quite explosive enough. You're like an aging running back at 30 years old now. Not quite explosive enough, not really able to be quite as physical and durable and all of that stuff at this age. And you're just, like he can earn volume downfield and he can still, one of the things he does do when he does catch it is he doesn't slow down. He's a freaking bull. So like when he catches a ball on the run, that's where a lot of the yak comes in. He can make some big plays on the move. But when you have some troubles dropping the ball and some of those things, Deebo as RB1 at Green Bay sounds great. I mean, I'll be in on that. But he's a concern for me from a like tailing off and the numbers are falling off. It's multiple years. I overlooked 2024 a little bit last year because of the pneumonia stuff that had happened that last year in San Francisco. And then watching the Washington year last year, I was like, man, I think he's kind of done at this point, or, it's probably not something I want to catch a falling knife on. I think we're on the back end of that career. Diggs didn't run a ton of routes. He's older and he's definitely done. He didn't always run all the routes. He looks like he's aging. and yet he looks like an aging player that still has the skill set. He was still creating some separation. He was still getting open, still had the good yards per route run that you're showing. The routes weren't there, but when they put him out there, they put him out there. It was a little bit of the situational thing I was talking about with like rookie year Adonai Mitchell and like Marvin Mims and some of that was like, yeah, his targets per route were through the roof because when they put him on, they were very likely to be throwing to him, like in like isolated situations. Maybe they didn't finish as high at the end of the year as you're looking at this, but I know early in the year, there were some stretches where like he had like 40% targets per route on in individual games and for like minor stretches and stuff. And they would use him in the red zone a lot and they throw to him in tight windows and he was making the contested catch. He's always been a better contested catch player than you'd think for like how big he is and all that stuff. The guy's another one of those diva types, right? That when he goes in, like, yeah, people say he's a cancer, but like he also plays hard, dude. That guy plays physical and plays hard. I mean, I would be concerned about his age and all that stuff, but if I don't know, is there like, I think all of his off-field stuff got settled, right? That like,
I believe so.
He had a thing with
anything about it. Yeah,
like an employee or something and I think it got dropped or it got.
Yeah, I think it's just the concern is like just he hadn't signed anywhere, but I think you're right. Like I have not heard anything recently about it.
I mean, this is a guy who had 85 catches last year, 1,000 yards, only 4 touchdowns, but. Again, to the point about like, can a dude have 100 targets, 80 catches, 1,000 yards, like in the late rounds? I assume he's going really late, right?
So he's actually. So here's a confession that I have. I've taken a lot of Deebo Samuel and I have not taken a lot of Stefon Diggs, but I am blaming the sidekick for this one if it turns out wrong. I think that Stefon Diggs goes much earlier than Deebo Samuel. I'll pull it up right now. So let's see.
You froze for a second there, at least on my end. He goes, what were you saying?
I'm pulling that up right now. So
okay.
I'm going to go wide receiver. Let's see. I think this is sort of by ADP. So let me find. He must go. I'm pretty sure he goes significantly earlier than Deebo, which is why I'm taking a lot of Deebo because it's a different bet where you're taking Diggs as opposed to where you're taking Deebo. That's where you can.
I love that your method for finding a player rather than search or even clicking the position is to just right. Scroll.
I should just all right. 135 ADP for Diggs. Deebo is 167. Which is like it sounds close together, but it's like a completely different range of players in those ranges.
Yeah. That's a big difference. And I can understand why you might want, I would think that's fair based on everything I just said, that Diggs would be a little bit more aggressive. I think Diggs, what was Diggs? 130 something? I think that's
135.
Worth making some bets on. I mean, I don't know the news in the scuttlebutt on whether he's actually going to sign or if people are out on him. He's one of those people that he's such a big personality. And, you feel like if you bring him in, he kind of has to be the number one. That's what the Patriots were doing last year. That was exciting that the Texans brought him in and kind of had him as an ancillary guy. And, he got a lot of targets in his 8 games with them before he tore his ACL, but then they didn't want anything to do with him again. It was like, it just didn't pan out or whatever. The question is like, where's he going to land? If he lands somewhere interesting, then it's
if he's on the Chiefs, like he could be pretty great. I think.
Yeah. I think another one that I would get pretty pumped about is the Commanders because I've been saying this for like multiple years, and they like old receivers. They're like, yeah, Zach Ertz. We should make the whole plane out of like old dudes. Terry McLaurin is not like. He's a good player, but like pretty much his whole career, the thing I've been saying for a lot of years is he's not like a guy, as far as a number one goes, he's not a guy who generates a ton of like his targets per route are low. It's when he gets the targets, he has a really high ADOT, he gets vertical ones, and he's very efficient on those. And he's good. Terry McLaurin's a good football player. I'll give him that. But I've always said this, like I've always thought he was more of like a small hit player where he'd go in like the 4th round. And if somebody came in there and was like a real target earner alongside him, that player would be interesting. I don't know that Diggs is that player at this point, but if that's a good landing spot for somebody. I mean, I'm interested in like Chigakonkwo for those reasons. Like Terry McLaurin, when I do like the projections and stuff, Terry McLaurin's not a guy that I'm going to project for the type of target share that I would for another like clear number one. Somebody else has to get volume in that offense as a result of that. I don't know who it's going to be this year. Antonio Williams as a rookie is kind of interesting. Like it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I think I maybe need to start just forcing in a little bit more digs. I heard Davis say on Ship Chasing or something that he's been drafting a lot of Stefon Diggs, but it is like, I think that's where I'm taking a lot of Omar Cooper, Travis Hunter. Like I've been, and sometimes I've been taking Hunter, where maybe I should be taking Cooper. But
you want to know my big take in this mold, like right now, just in May, this type of player that I think is like just grossly mispriced, and I don't really understand it. And maybe there's something you can tell me that I'm missing. But why is Calvin Ridley's ADP like 180?
He's a player that I've taken a lot of. I think it's because, I think it's probably because they added Carnell, Tate, and they've got Wan'Dale Robinson, and people just see him as like, and he, was not great last year. Like people were drafting him at, I forget, like the 5-6 turn, I want to say. And people were like super excited about taking him there. And then he was just like really let down from that perspective if you're taking him at the 5-6 turn. So totally. I think he was a disappointment last year relative to what we thought he was. He's getting older. I don't even know how old Calvin Ridley is. He's not that old, right? He's still fairly young.
He's actually older than you think.
Oh, is he older than we think? Okay.
He's turning 32 in December at the end of the year. He's already 31.
But he's still fast, right? He's still like had pretty fast like top speed scores. But yeah, I think it's the addition of Carnell, Tate, and Wan'Dale Robinson. So it's people are viewing him as the wide. Like he's being drafted as the wide receiver 3 on that team.
But this was a team that had nothing. They had to play day 3 receivers a ton last year to just see what they had. And both Elike Manor and Chimere DK, I mean, I don't even think I need to learn how to say their names because they both had like 1.0 yards per out run. They weren't good. People are really out on Cam Ward. I got that a little bit on the Ship Chasing draft stream. And I came in pretty hot on the Ship Chasing draft stream saying some negative stuff about Carnell Tate. I'm not like completely out on him, but he is a player. I think when you peel back the layers, there's some concern about some limitations for like a top 5 pick. I think people like are looking at it like he's a top 5 pick. Like that's a massive draft capital. And I do think it's relevant that this was not a very good class. And then the profile itself relative to like, whatever, Jamar Chase as a top 5 pick. Like people are taking him where people were taking Jamar Chase as a rookie. And Jamar Chase was a massive hit as a rookie in that range. Jamar Chase was also a super prospect from like every aspect. Ball in hand stuff was through the roof. Carnell Tate's not good. Ability to win at all depths was through the roof. Production profile, massive. Carnell Tate's is good, but not elite. And then the athletic testing was like insane for Jamar Chase as well. It kind of backed it up. And you're like, this guy's like a thick, fast, like super athletic player. And Tate's, I think good enough athlete, but he's not necessarily a great athlete. But his production last year was largely air yards. I was talking about that vertical element of like ADOT plus yak. He did not have good yak numbers. And he really only has the one good year of production this last season. Not that like he was bad prior to that. He was like solid the first couple years. And then this last year, his yards per out run really spiked. It mostly spiked on account of catch point air yards. Like he caught a lot of deep balls. And I think he's good at that. It's a lot like what I was just describing with Terry McLaurin. And I think that's probably like a good comp for like what he could be long-term. But when you talk about a rookie version of a player that's probably not shown us the ability to win at all depths in a meaningful way, he's going to get a lot of volume. And I do think Tate's really interesting. But like the way I would describe it is the gap in ADP between Tate and Calvin Ridley is odd to me because Calvin Ridley is not, he's old and he's not like amazing or anything, but he's going way late. Like Carnell Tate's going in the 5th round. Calvin Ridley's going 190 or 180 or whatever it is. Calvin Ridley last year had a 1.89 yards per out, which is still good. He only played 5 games, really. He played 7, but he played 6 snaps in his 6th game and then was hurt and then tried to come back in week 11 and played 1 snap and then got hurt again. So his last 2 games, 7 total snaps. If you're looking at his per game numbers, kind of throw that out. One of those 5 games, they lost 26-0 and he only played 54% of the snaps. Blowout loss at Houston in week 4. The other 4 games that he actually played, which is 4 of the first 5 games of Cam Ward's career, 6+ targets in every game. His last game, the production wasn't amazing or anything, but the last game he closed with a 131-yard game. I mean, he barely played last year, but there's like, when I dug into the yards per out run stuff for my field tipper series in February and March earlier this offseason, I was like, man, Calvin Ridley was better than I thought he was on a per route basis. And I went and looked at it and looked at the game log. And like, I honestly like think there's a little bit of an edge sometimes with like just looking at guys' game logs and understanding where it comes from instead of like that holistic of like what his final numbers were and or that vibes based thing of like, yeah, he didn't return ADP. I mean, you see that, you look at his game log, you see he played 7 games, but 2 of them were complete nothing burgers, and a third was a blowout loss where they pulled their starters. And then the other 4, like, he's seeing actual volume. He's not super productive, but he actually got the yards per route run up above. It was the second best season of his career. Like, he wasn't bad last year. Only 160 routes, not amazing. The additions of Carnell, Tate, and Wan'Dale Robinson are real, but they don't have a huge tight end presence. Gunnar Helm, I thought, was actually pretty darn interesting last year. But my other main point would be when we start talking about these multi-tight end sets and the ways that these offenses are moving, like Wan'Dale Robinson, I think people are drafting, like, I think he's interesting from a volume perspective. I've always liked him. He earns a lot of targets. I think people are drafting him like he's going to play in 2 wide receiver sets, and I don't know why he would. He's a small slot receiver. It's probably Ridley and Tate. Ridley has a relationship with Deebo that goes back to college. Deebo, I was trying to look up some stuff on Ridley yesterday because I was like, I'm missing something. I ended up taking him in one of the fantasy cares eliminators in the late rounds. That's why I was doing some research on him. I'm doing some charity eliminator best ball stuff right now for the Scott Fish fantasy cares stuff. And I took Ridley in the late round because I'm just like, that's a very volume based scoring system in that league. It's like whatever, 2 points per reception or something. I'm like, I think Calvin Ridley is going to have some games where he strings together 7 or 8 catches this year. I mean, it's those 3 receivers. And I do think Tate's going to be good. And I do think Wan'Dale Robinson's going to see volume, but I also think Cam Ward's going to drop back and throw the ball a good amount. He was more of a gunslinger last year, even though he wasn't great. I don't think they have depth. I don't think DK and Ayo Manor are real threats. And I don't think the tight ends are meaningful target like competition. I think it's those 3 receivers really. And again, yeah, I think Wan'Dale's an interesting click at his price as well. But to me, and I don't know, one of the other elements of the Tate thing is if you're picking him there, you're making a little bit of a bet on Cam Ward and stuff. And that's why I say the gap is like, if Cam Ward's decent, like I want to make a bet on Calvin Ridley at 180. Like that's a good deal at, if you're telling me that Carnell Tate's worth a 5th round pick or a 5-6 turn pick. I mean, that's just, I don't know. That's the way that I'm seeing it right now. To me, like people talk a lot about the rookies get pushed up. I think we need to be a little more discerning about which profiles we're actually classifying as having elite ceiling. And I really do think Tate doesn't have the profile for me that I'm, oh yeah, full filibuster.
I just put up a comment on for our audio listeners. Put up a comment on stream on YouTube. Gretch on a full filibuster talking point equals dibs and Deebo. Highest percentage of discussion time regarding Calvin Ridley. Listen, if you want to, if there's a player that you really want to talk about, I'm happy to hear it. I'll say this: if Calvin Ridley pans out this year, I'm going to forgive the sidekick for jamming Deebo Samuel down my throat because it's jamming Calvin Ridley down my throat much harder.
There you go. The sidekick knows what it's doing. Calvin Ridley makes a lot of sense to me. It's hard to get receivers in the double-digit rounds that you think can go for 1,000 yards. Calvin Ridley, just the year prior to last, when he got hurt, 2024, went for 1,000 yards. I mean, that's in his first season with the Titans. The Titans suck, but he got 1,000 yards with Will Levis 2 years ago. Like, if Cam Ward is better at all, like, I mean, Calvin Ridley he shouldn't be going 180, and I think he's going to close at like 120 is my take. I mean, I'm going to do my best because I'm going to end up talking about him a lot on the different things that I do. He's going to be I might project him for more targets than Carnell Tate. I think it's ridiculous. Carnell Tate's good, but this idea of like a rookie that has ceiling, we still have to keep in mind, like Corain's research with rookies was like, they often don't run as much routes. When they hit on efficiency. I did some work off of that a couple years later, and I was at the time looking at Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, who are the most recent breakout star rookies. Both of them were like at least 2 receptions per game, I think it was, or 2 targets per game, better in year 2 than year 1. Even when they were clear hits as rookies, the volume accelerates into year 2. That was a big reason I was on Trey McBride in 2024 so heavily. I was like, everyone's out on him because of Marvin Harrison. Even if Marvin Harrison hits, he probably doesn't become his full form in year 1. We think about rookies weird as far as how they hit on other players. I do think Carnell Tate is a thing. I'm not saying he's bad. I came in a little bit hot on chip chasing. I think the profile is a little bit more ancillary than people want to admit. Maybe I'll be wrong on that. But especially as a rookie, he strikes me as a player that is not like through the roof 150 targets ceiling type of guy. And so who's going to get it? Wan'Dale and Ridley to me are both. I don't love the Titans offense or anything, but those are both good picks. There's no one else in this passing game.
I'm kind of regretting that I didn't hear your thoughts on Carnell Tate before I traded Colston Loveland for him in the Dynasty League. There were for Colston Loveland for Carnell Tate plus a few draft picks,
a bunch of stuff
in my defense. Yeah. But that was one that I sort of regretted immediately anyway. And I feel like if I had heard your thoughts on Carnell Tate, I probably would have just not done that.
I could be wrong on the profile. The big thing about the Ridley thing is just that I don't know that Tate's going to be like a massive year one. It just doesn't profile to me as like the guy who steps on the field and is like the elite rookie right away. Yeah. I mean, he didn't do it at all depths. He didn't do it with the ball in hand stuff. He basically was, and then he got hurt a little bit. So one of my bigger concerns about him is he didn't run a ton of routes. I was talking about that a little on that ship chasing draft stream. And then Crane was like, so you're just mad at like that he didn't have the raw stats. And it's like, no, I'm not. The point that I was trying to make about the routes is that when your yards per out run is really good for 1 year and we're doing the rate stat thing, and the component parts that I always look at are targets per out and yards per target. I like to break it up. And he was more yards per target. He was at 13.3 yards per target that really drove that. I want to see the full sample when it's that, because that's deep efficiency is one of the most inconsistent and like not sticky forms of, efficiency. And that's also the thing that I was trying to make a case. Like I would think he got boosted by playing alongside everyone makes it. He played alongside Jeremiah Smith. That's why he wasn't better. I'm like, well, he probably benefited from one-on-one coverage downfield that helped that exact stat. Where his production came in was a lot of deep air yards. Like, and I use a stat that Mina Kimes gave on the Seahawks during the postseason last year. When JSN was on the field, the Seahawks deep targets averaged double the separation of the league average for deep targets for non-JSN players. Wow, and the point was the gravity of JSN. Then you're getting like Torrey Horton open and all these dudes were hitting on deep shots because JSN was so good that's what I think Tate kind of benefited from probably a little bit with we whisper that a little. Like, I'm not trying to say that a guy with I know better than the NFL. He has top 5 draft capital. Like, obviously I'm couching this a little bit in the fact that he has really high expectations, but I'd be a little concerned that he only ran 290 routes. And we're talking about rate stats for 1 season. And it's largely driven by air yards efficiency, which is highly volatile year over year. That's probably one of the hardest things to take from 1 year to from college to the pros, because now you're putting the new quarterback, new scheme, better defenders all the way across the league, obviously. And you don't have a lot of ball and hand skills. You don't have a lot of like production at lower depths or intermediate depths that I was aware of that I see in the profile. So his ADOT was 14.6 last year. It was very, very high. To me, like for him to come in and be a target dominant year one guy that makes it so that they don't need, like if Calvin Ridley can stay healthy for Calvin Ridley to like get some volume, I don't think that's what Carnell Tate probably like. That's what the expectation should be for Carnell Tate, at least in year one.
Right.
I think multiple years down the road, Carnell Tate could maybe be a pretty good receiver that like a Terry McLaurin type player, like that relies on the deep efficiency and could be an interesting guy for sure. But
I would take that for my dynasty team because I'm not trying to play for this year anyway. All right. I am going to ask you. So I put a bunch of running backs on the screen. You can see them. They go in about the same range. I actually don't have them in exact ADP order, but this is kind of a range. To me, this is like a tier of running backs that you can draft. Those being Chris Rodriguez, Kenneth Gainwell, Ja'Cory Kressky-Merritt, Rashad White, Jonathan Brooks, Aaron Jones, and Jordan Mason. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. If you have a clear favorite here, if you want to, attempt to rank them. I know you said you haven't done a ton of drafting, so you haven't really given a ton of thought to like this specific. Like, how do you rank this set of running backs? I want to hear your thought. I am going to run out for 1 second, but I'll pose this question. I'll be right back.
Okay. I said to you before that I hadn't done a ton of off-season work yet. I haven't done my projections yet. These are the types of players, the late round running backs, that I feel like crystallize my takes on them as I go through the projections and get a better understanding of how I want to project out the volume. Or really, it's not just the volume with late round running backs, or it's almost not that at all. It's getting a better feel for some of their metrics from the last season, and more importantly, like what I think their sort of range of outcomes is, how things could work out for them. But yeah, when I saw this list, the names that stand out, Jonathan Brooks stands out to me as a really fun one. obviously health, permitting, but they took him really high coming off an ACL. Then he got another ACL. I've seen some of the medical stuff. The reporting on that seems to be that the first ACL wasn't a very good procedure. And so it retore. And then they gave him a whole year off to rehab since the second re-tear in 2024. He missed all of 2025 and did a little bit of a different procedure, a different surgeon. One of the Twitter accounts broke that down. One of the Twitter docs. I wish I could give credit where it's due, but I was reading it. I thought it was really interesting. And so, yeah, it won't surprise you, but I'm still talking about the first player that
I assumed that I'd be back in time to hear about the first one.
So I was just talking about Jonathon Brooks, and that I think if he's healthy enough, and some of the stuff I'd seen on the medical stuff, but if he's healthy enough, he seems like a really nice. I mean, obviously we saw that Chuba Hubbard got displaced by Rico Dowdle last year, and Brooks is the younger player. I think some real upside in terms of, they took him in the second round a couple years ago, and he was considered a really good prospect. And then, yeah, if it's true what, like some of what I just said before you got back, but if it's like the first ACL was kind of a bad procedure, and so it retore, and then a different surgeon took it and did a different type of procedure. And there was some positive stuff about, like, they didn't have to re-drill the holes, or there wasn't any kind of like cartilage issue, or it was one of the Twitter docs. And I said, I wish I could give the credit to who it was, but had some good info on that to me felt very bullish. Now that he's got a whole year off from 2025, it's been a long time now that he's had to rehab this, because he hurt it, re-injured it in 2024. I think Brooks is a real upside play. Probably would be my favorite on this list. I think all of Chris Rodriguez, Kenneth Gainwell, Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt, Rachaad White, all of them immediately to me are intriguing. Obviously, White and JCM are the. I love that you have them like, it's like multiple hyphens, because it fits. Yeah. Like we just call him Bill. We can call him whatever. They're the lead backs on an offense that has. I still think Jane Daniels is a really good quarterback. Has one of the better young quarterbacks in the entire NFL. One of Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt or Rachaad White's going to make people money, I think, this year. I mean, I think you kind of have to. One of the things that I think has been, unless it's Katron Allen or whatever, but one of the things that I think has been clear about Washington's ground game the last couple of years, because the volume has been pretty split. I don't know if it can be a split this year. They've had more heads in there. But one of the things that's been clear to me is Daniel's presence and the offense that they were running with Kingsbury, and maybe it'll be different without him. But I think some of it is Daniel's presence and the ability to pull the ball and run into the edge, created running lanes on the interior, which was creating explosive plays, because it wasn't just, Chris Rodriguez had some big runs. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt had some big runs, but we saw like Jeremy McNichols had like a 50-yard touchdown last year, which was like kind of tilting to me, because I think I was playing Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt in some stuff against like a bad run D, and I'm like, oh yeah, sure, it's Jeremy McNichols getting the 50-yard touchdown. But it's been a lot of different guys. Brian Robinson had some explosive plays before. They just were like, you're not even good enough to be on the team anymore. We're just going to like trade you for a bag of peanuts. We don't want you. Austin Eckler was looking like better than his last year with the Chargers when he came over. All the different dudes that are playing in that backfield over the last 2 years alongside Daniels have found space. I really like that for Rachaad White, who's a player that I've always disliked as a runner, because he is so slow to get started. I've always said he has like cement in his shoes, and he's like, does not hit holes hard, and he's very patient in the backfield. But if you get him into space, he's a big back that has a lot of speed. He actually does have straight line speed. And some of Rachaad White's best plays, and the reason he's been productive, is like some swing passes where they got him into space and he's just able to take off. I think White could be good in a scheme where like they get him some lanes on like a shotgun draw, and the offensive line's able to move some bodies, and he doesn't have to worry about getting up to speed, or like he can get up to speed. He doesn't have to worry about like hitting a hole hard. I think he could be really interesting. Obviously, we know he can play in the pass game and do a lot of different things that coaches like, pass block and be reliable. So he's actually pretty darn interesting to me as a later ADP guy. But then obviously Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt a little bit more like splash, explosiveness, youth, like running upside. But one of those two seems like they're going to be really good. Chris Rodriguez seems like he's going to get plenty of work alongside Tootin. Like I think they're both probably going to play, but I'd certainly get the bet on him. We talked a little bit about Gainwell when we talked about Bucky. All of those guys are like, to me, there's some real anti-fragile elements to those different profiles. like certainly Gainwell, like if something happens to Bucky, like any kind of chaos, like I think it's very positive for Gainwell because he's a reliable player. And then I left Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason off of that mostly because I don't really know what to do with Minnesota. I do think they're also very clickable guys for sure. Like I think that offense is going to be better this year. I think they want to do like an inside outside running thing. They talked about the complementary styles there all of last offseason. It didn't really pan out great. I do think what's his face? Claiborne is really interesting that they drafted as sort of like an heir apparent to Aaron Jones. Really, like it's the speed thing. I saw some people comparing him to Achane. Like he doesn't have Achane's. He's small and fast, but that's where the comparison stopped. Like Achane was a surprising workhorse for his size, and he had really good like missed tackles force rates and breakaway run rates. Claiborne has none of that. He was not that big of a workhorse, and I mean he was a decent workhorse, but didn't break tackles anywhere near the rate of Achane and didn't have breakaway runs near the rate of Achane despite the speed. So I don't want a pattern match. That said, this is the whole, Shanahan McVay coaching tree. They like the outside zone. They like speed. I'm thinking more of like the Elijah Mitchell year, like when he was a rookie, and you get speed to the edge. And as long as Aaron Jones is healthy, that's probably his role. But I think Claiborne is very clearly like the handcuff to Aaron Jones, actually, which makes Jordan Mason a little less interesting is sort of where I'm going with this as well. Is like, he wasn't great last year. And I think they kind of see him as just the interior runner. In theory, he should have got a lot of touchdowns. And if their offense is better, there's the potential for him to score double-digit touchdowns. So like maybe I still think he is probably clickable, but I think the Vikings offense is going to be better. They're going to score more. And so like one of these backs is going to be interesting, but I would mix both of them in, and then I would mix in Claiborne as well. If Jones is just kind of too old and gets hurt, I think Claiborne could end up being somewhat interesting. I kind of just said that negatively about Mason, and then I kind of talked myself back into Mason by saying, Jones is probably a little bit fragile, and Mason's probably going to get the goal line work, and the offense is probably going to get better, and
offensive line probably going to be better. Yeah.
Yeah. So the interior running for Mason might act in a half PPR format. That might actually wind up being the thing that you actually want to bank on. And he has less like competition or age related concern than Jones does. But I think Jones is just probably the far superior player from what he's been his whole
he
career.
catches passes, it's
right.
as JJ has done, mentioned several times. He brought up last year, he was one of the players, like AJ did a study on like running backs who get a certain amount of, I forget what the actual stat is, but it's like a certain amount of snaps, or I think it's actually targets per route run. If targets per route run at some threshold of routes run, if it's low enough, that's like really bad for like their predictive fantasy points going forward. And Jordan Mason was one of those guys coming in last year that was like his targets per route run are really bad. And it was kind of a bear signal. And yeah, he was pretty bad last year. And he's on that list again this year. Just like,
one of the things about that, I do remember that research he did. One of the things about that was it was more about it was ADPs like inside of like 100. I know it was more about like the running back dead zone. And so Jordan Mason had a loftier ADP last year. I do think in this range, you're less concerned about being one dimensional as a back, right?
True. Yeah. That's kind of what you get in this range. If you're good in that one dimension, like that'll pay off this ADP.
Right. Exactly. And that's part of like one of the things I've seen a lot on some of the best ball commentary. I'm not super into the weeds with it this year, but is it like, you got to get the running backs early. And I do think the landscape is changing, and I'm all about taking more running backs early. I think this is an intriguing 7-player list that you just gave me.
And there's actually, I meant to add Tyrone Tracy at the end of this list also. He goes a little bit after this, but like kind of the same tier, I would say.
Perfectly intriguing as well. I'm looking at ADP after them, Jonah Coleman, Keaton Mitchell. Like some of those guys are interesting young players as well. I'm pretty into both of those dudes as well as just like big swings. Like once you're getting closer to 150 in ADP, I think my take will be and has been from what I've seen that I think the best ball community does this sometimes. They're right, they're directionally accurate, and they go too far. It's just like we get into like a groupthink thing, and we're going to be really, really confident in this take. I've seen a lot of stuff about zero RBs dead and all that stuff. The zero RB dead thing is dead thing. Like you guys want to filibuster, don't get me started. But that happens every single year. It's never been dead. You've always been wrong if that's your opinion. It's a draft strategy, and the tenants are like, they're not, you can't it doesn't change with like the times. Like, just because running backs have started scoring more points in fantasy you can't get running back points on your roster for sure just by drafting them earlier. Like, people, whenever they do the 0 RB thing, they say, look at how many points running backs score. Look at how many points wide receivers score. You need to draft the running backs early. It always ignores where the running back points actually come from. In the last few years, they have come from the early rounds. But just a few years ago, like 3-4 years ago, not that long ago, was the year with Kyren Williams and Raheem Mostert, and the $1 million BBM regular season champ was a Kyren Williams, Raheem Mostert team. It was a full 0 RB team. His first running back was like, I think, AJ Dillon, who didn't do anything for him. It was all double-digit running backs that scored him points. I think he had Rachaad White on that team. And my point is, running back is always going to be a position that is driven more by volume. If you get a season where you run into a lot of early running back injuries, and some of these offenses start to become problematic for the production of the players, which we know can happen. We talked about some receivers earlier, but it can happen for running backs too. Totally. I think it was probably part of the problem for Saquon Barkley last year, for example, coming off of 2024. If you get into a season like that and you get enough early running back injuries, two things happen. The early running backs don't score, and the late running backs do score, because they replace that volume. And we know it's a position where a late running back can immediately step into a lot of work. And then if we're doing rest of season drafts, we're all taking them in round 4. The value just changes from round 14 to round 4, like that quick. There's no other position where a value can change in 1 week because somebody else tore his ACL 10 rounds. And you're suddenly like, okay, this guy's now 10 rounds better. It doesn't happen anywhere else. That's why we talk about like early wide receiver volume, is because the late round wide receivers, you need to find like clear breakout talents, because they don't have contingent like injury upside, because there's 3 receivers on a team. And just because like player A goes down, like everyone moves up on the rung. The wide receiver 2 now becomes more of the wide receiver 1. The wide receiver 3 becomes a 2. It doesn't happen the same way it does at running back. People are just like so confident again that running backs, you have to take them early. You have to build with early running backs. It's like, you guys apparently have not been playing fantasy football that long. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's just like, there's been other seasons than just the last couple of years. This happens every time running backs stay healthy for 2 or 3 years. Everyone rushes to make the same point. I do think the league has shifted. I do think there's more running. I talked about the lack of wide receiver ceiling because of some of the macro changes, the way defenses are playing. I'm taking it very seriously. I want to take earlier running backs. It is not, I have seen people make definitive statements on Twitter multiple times this offseason. This is the reason this is such a long show. This is one of the first pieces of content I've done in months. And so you got me on here. You got me going. These are the things that I've been thinking about from the things that I've seen. I've seen people definitively say you can't get boxed out. You have to have your RB3 by this point. Absolutely, absolutely wrong. Completely disagree. I think you're terrible at fantasy football. Like, if you want to get serious about it, I think you don't understand how this works. If you think you have to get a certain amount of running backs by a certain point, that I'm not saying you go full 0 RB on every draft, and I'm not even saying you do it a lot. I'm absolutely saying if a room pushes you that way, you have to have that in your toolbox and the willingness to go that way. Learn how to draft, take what like the rooms give you, and all these. 0 RB has never been a thing that you have to do in any situation. That's always been the issue, that it's had its own zealots and people that pushed it way too hard and try to do it in every situation. No, that's not the way that anyone's ever really necessarily said that. The chat saying the last 3 BBM winners were Piss Boy, Hero. Crane was the last RB start to win. Like, yeah, I mean, even the early like anchor, like 1 RB stuff might end up being the right answer this year. But all it takes is like, I mean, the next year after the Kyren and Mostert one, all the early running backs were really, really strong.
Yeah. And there was 0 injuries, and like that's
there was 0 injuries,
some kind of injury or something for.
But there was still late round studs. It was Bucky and Tyrone Tracy, and I had a lot of those guys, and I was like, I think they were rookies the next year.
Was that Chase Brown year too, where Chase Brown was like going around
and Chase Brown,
10 or something? Yeah.
All 3 of those dudes were really good, and it was just like I had a lot of all those guys, and I didn't smash quite as much because the early running backs were so good. Literally all it would have taken is a few more key early running back injuries, and those builds would have dominated that year too. They absolutely would have. They didn't score as much as like a healthy Christian McCaffrey season, because Christian McCaffrey we all know Christian McCaffrey is a stud, but like just because Christian McCaffrey stayed healthy last year doesn't mean that like the tenets of 0 RB no longer apply. It's a it's not a year-to-year thing. It's a proven science. Like it's literally how the sport works. Like, please, can we stop doing the same thing?
And to your point, I mean, you look at the running backs that are going in the first couple of rounds, a lot of them have a lot of mileage on them. And that doesn't mean that they're all going to get hurt this year, but like probably, we're going to see some cliffs, some injuries are bound to happen. And I will say, I feel like 2 or 3 months ago, I had a really tough time doing zero RB because it was just like, there's so much unknown later in drafts. I don't feel comfortable with any of the later running backs. And like right now, I've been doing it more and more because we're getting more and more of these names that are exciting. And I just showed you some of my favorite names on that list. Jonathon,
that's what got me so jazzed about this point.
Yeah, exactly.
I've been seeing like you can't take a running back after like ADP 80 or ADP 100 or something. And I'm like, I haven't really been looking at it a lot, but man, maybe that's what we're looking at this year. Like I've been drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit from these points. I'm like, these guys are more engaged than me. Maybe I got to be open to that. And then you show me that list and I start talking about them and I'm like, this is the same as every other year. There are interesting play. That's a whole list of interesting players. There's 2 offenses right there in Washington and Minnesota that I think are decent offenses. And those are the top backs. Those are the top backs in those offenses. Someone's going to score points. What are we talking about? We can't draft late running backs.
The funny thing is, so I still did a fair amount of zero RB last year, and it missed for me because all of my late round guys were like Jarquez Hunter, and I can't even remember all the names. Like the Bengals rookie from last year, it was just like none of them ended up being anything. So I think a lot of people are like me, or a little bit gun shy. Rashard Smith, another Chiefs guy, like a lot of us took a ton of those, like, oh, this is a great rookie running back class, and then you take them in the last round and none of those guys worked out. But like this year, like I feel so much more comfortable with some of these like mid to late round running backs, or like mostly just like in the past couple of weeks, I've gotten way more comfortable with some of these running backs than I had been. And I think I'm going to be doing more of the probably more hero RB than zero RB. I think that is one thing that I did so much zero RB a couple of years ago, and it just like having the one anchor that like you can count on week after week does feel pretty good. But I've definitely done some zero RB.
To be clear, I'm not out here trying to tout that like I would be doing a ton of zero RB. I wouldn't. I do think it's shifting the other way. I'm just pushing back on the like. I've seen these like. We used to do the wide receiver avalanche thing on ship chasing. You have to get a certain amount of wide receivers or you're going to be screwed. And I do think that fits more for wide receiver because of the things I said about how that position works. Yeah. But I think you can definitely rethink the early receiver depth for a couple of reasons. Like I think the market identifies some of the wrong players at times these days as well. Like I was talking about, if you can get Calvin Ridley at 180, like I'm not saying like he's definitely going to hit. And I'm not saying that I'm going to be right about early running backs not hitting or any of that stuff. But like, I'm just trying to think of where do I want to make my bets, right? Like, and I think you can do some different things with receiver now. You don't have to. It's never the case that you have to get a certain amount of running backs early. Just never buy that. I'm the guy who did the original dead zone, whatever research when I was at CBS and all that. The dead zone still is real. Like this happens every year. I've written about it every year. I get asked about it all the time. Every year around this time, people are way too confident in dead zone backs and projected workload, and they're way too unconfident in the types of names that you just threw out here. And then we get, porque no los dos, for sure. Why not both?
Yeah, I mean, using the sidekick, I will say, like, I've gotten a ton of both. Like, I'll have drafts where it, like, leans hard into wide receivers. I think, it to your point, it's like, just take what the room gives you. Like, don't go in like, this is what I'm doing in this draft. You have to have an open mind draft to draft. And having an open mind, you can get a variety of different teams.
I would be uncomfortable drafting. I always have talked about zero RB being an uncomfortable strategy, and then I got comfortable doing it and have executed it and had a lot of success doing it, as I got better at understanding how it's an uncomfortable strategy. I would be uncomfortable doing zero RB this year. I do want that to be clear. Like I'm not saying it's easy, but I like never the hard and fast rules, which the chat is getting. And I've obviously hammered the point. I would prefer, like you were saying, a hero RB or at least some early RB. And I think the hyper fragile stuff is really interesting too. I've seen some of Pete's drafts occasionally, and he's done a few of those that I've been like, hey, it's a good draft. You can build some pretty good receiver rooms still. Like that's one of the things where like I'm talking about the Calvin Ridley thing. Like, well, yeah, if you start with 4 straight running backs, No, I think we're actually about to start to draft a hyper fragile team is what's about to happen.
We're going to enter. I'm going to enter a draft right now. I know that I had initially asked you if you have time to do 2 drafts, and right now we are. I don't think that either of us anticipated that we'd be nearly 2 hours in before we get into a draft. So we'll get into a draft right now.
I don't know why you didn't anticipate that.
I should have. Well, I just, a lot of the time I'll start the draft and then start the conversation, but I wanted to talk about these topics so much that I was like, we're just going to do the conversation first and then the draft. So it's just a totally different approach by me to how we're doing the show. But I feel like I'm glad I did it this way because we had more time to really hammer in on some of those points that I want to talk about, as opposed to when you're trying to draft. It's it's
impossible.
Get 3 sentences in and it's okay, now we got to make a pick, and it's just it kind of throws things.
This is why I love coming on with you. You let me chat a little bit, and I'm long-winded for sure. I make the well-rounded points, we'll say. And 20-second clocks.
We can handle it when it's verbal, as opposed to you also write really, really long. You write a novel every time you write something, and a lot of us don't have the attention span to do that. So it's good to get this all in podcast form.
Yeah, I'm happy to. And like we were saying, it's my guy Nick, the 2-time FFPC main event champion, right there. Go Bills. The other thing we're talking about is it's allergy season for me. There's not going to be a filter. I'm just you get me going, I'm going to go. I'm already bad enough. But yeah, no, I'm excited to draft. I'm glad that we got through a lot of the long takes and we can just draft. But for me, it's always really hard to, like you said, to have the conversations while drafting, especially with the 20 seconds. It's 20 seconds again.
20 seconds on it. You don't have a choice on Underdog now. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even have time to think through it. You're gonna be the tiebreaker because again, I haven't taken enough. I don't even know if I've done an Underdog draft this year.
What's going to be the tiebreaker is the sidekick. A lot of the time, what I'll do is I'll queue up the top of the sidekick and then be like, tell me if you like somebody else that you want, if you prefer somebody other than the top of the sidekick.
Sure.
We're waiting on 3. We're waiting on 3.
I'm pumped. We're going to be drafting against all these people. They're going to take Calvin Ridley 6 rounds too early.
Yeah, they're going to take now they've heard you being bullish on AJ Brown. They were already not letting me get AJ Brown. Now somebody's going to take him at pick 15 or something. Make sure we got no shot at him.
It was a disaster. Good thing I was just lying for the last 2 hours.
The good news is we're going to get Carnell Tate at 110.
That's right, Carnell Tate at 110. I can't wait.
Rabona asks, would you rather draft 100 BBMs in May or in August?
I would rather in May because I want to be drafting redraft in August. And one of my takes is I think best ball and redraft are, people talk about how there's a delineation there. I think they're completely different games. I think it's so different. I think that's part of why I'm not doing as much best ball drafting is I think it probably made me a worse redraft player for a couple of years. And I play at FFPC in the main event, high stakes stuff. And I think it's making the field worse at redraft, to be honest with you, the popularity of best ball. And so I've gotten back into really fixating on redraft and have had some pretty good years the last couple of years because I think people don't necessarily play the stuff.
I had my worst redraft year ever last year. I don't know. I'm in 5 leagues. I didn't make the championship in a single one of them. I'm pretty sure. After I had won a couple championships the year prior to that, it was, which is probably my best ball brain. You're right, because I did hundreds of best ball drafts, and probably
it's tricky.
Also, I'm just doing so much other stuff that I maybe didn't prioritize redraft quite as much. Bindles, appreciate you giving out 5 memberships to the
Bindles. What's up?
You're the man.
We got a crew in the chat today, so we got the 102. I'm with you, Gibbs over Bijan, but I think they're probably in a half PPR. They're pretty clearly the 1-2.
Yep.
My question is structurally, you've done a lot of drafts when you're picking from the front. What happens at the 2-3 turn? Do you feel good about starting running back?
Yeah. I love taking. I always take Bijan or Gibbs with my first 2. Usually at the turn, there's usually good wide receivers available.
Yep. Let's do it.
Okay.
Let's build the hyper fragile team that we've been talking about.
I do want to state I don't actually know what ranks I have in here overall. Because I use the sidekick. These are probably a month old ETR ranks that I have adjusted 12 of the picks or something like that. So don't see these ranks and think those are Neil's ranks, because I use the sidekick, and I'm always like, there are some picks. I think I even saw like Jonathan Brooks was in one of my drafts. I still had him ranked like 130, and I was like, I don't have Jonathan, but like I think I moved, like that was when he was ranked lower, and I moved him up to 130, and now it's like I take him earlier than that. So yeah. So this is where so my take has been, if you can get AJ Brown in the third round, you take AJ Brown in the third round. So I've just been like 25 is where, the start, but I've actually started moving him up to like sometimes, because I don't want the turn to take him. Like,
yeah,
depending on who's available at our next pick, he's somebody that I would consider. But I'll show you. We'll see who the names are that are there. I'm open to taking different players if you like them.
The other thing I'm going to need you. I love it. I think we should just take AJ Brown in the second round. The other thing that I'm going to need you to do for me is help me out with the week 17 stuff, because I certainly have not learned Corain's mnemonics this year so far.
I've learned some of Corain's mnemonics. I do not have them memorized, and again, I think that's partially, and actually I probably should, because probably sometimes the sidekick is breaking ties in that way, or it's probably affecting some of the decisions the sidekick is making, and then I'm just saying I want this player instead. But I think that I know both the bye weeks and the week 17 stuff worse this year than I would have in past years for the number of drafts that I've done, because I've been relying more on the sidekick. So it's like, the sidekick will figure it out for me. I've gotten a little bit lazy with my week 17, but I know a lot of the week 17 stuff. So we have Bijan, Atlanta. Oh man, do I know Atlanta? Cats.
The chat said AJ Brown. Oh, chat that said AJ Brown isn't him is the guy who said less yapping, more drafting, or guy or gal. The only one that actually won. I think everyone else was enjoying our conversation, but
I think they were too.
AJ Brown isn't him is a bold take, folks. So that's all I'll have to say about that.
Yeah,
not a take that I would throw out there.
What would you put the odds at that AJ Brown finishes as a top 5 fantasy receiver this season? Top 5. So that's you can see the first round here. We have Chase, Nakua, JSN, Lamb, Amon St. Brown, and Jefferson. So you need to beat out Drake London ahead of him, Nico Collins, George Pickens. These are the guys that are going ahead of him at receiver. What do you think the odds are that he could break into the top 5 there? Any chance?
Yeah, I think there's a meaningful chance. Yeah. Top 5 is not. I mean, again, there weren't that many elite receiver seasons last year. I was just looking at it now, like what the scoring level he would need to get into was. The Pickens was 5, but then Pickens had 243 half PPR points. Then Olave had 220 at 6, and then Zay Flowers had 206 at 7, and Devontae Adams had 192 at 8. There's like 5 good ones, and this massive drop off, 50-point drop off over the next 3 slots. I mean, it wouldn't be that hard for the top 5 to not even be that high scoring of a mark.
We're about to be on the clock, so I'm sorry. I do have to interrupt you now. So we are.
I love all 3 of those top names. I think McBride, Rice, and AJ Brown. Okay. Oh, so what were you going to pitch? Jeremiah Love?
I usually do AJ Brown here, but I'd be fine if you prefer Jeremiah Love, Trey McBride.
Let's just take AJ Brown. Yeah, we've been talking about AJ Brown a ton. I feel love Trey McBride, but let's take Brown. Let's take Brown, and then
so do you like? Are you a McBride over Bowers guy?
No. Okay. I mean, I haven't given that enough thought or anything. I do think it's weird that one of the things I wrote in my last piece was that Trey McBride's ADP was early 3rd round going into last year, and then he had one of the best tight end seasons that you'll ever have. He ran like the most routes, I think, ever for a tight end, as far back as PFS data goes. And so people are like, yeah, well, it was all just routes based. It's like, I mean, this is one of those things where like I feel like people are directionally accurate, but then they overreact. And so we get both McBride and Rashee Rice. I don't care. I don't know structurally if you like to take an early tight end, but
I'm happy to do it. I do it.
This is where he was going into last year, and then he had an elite season. And Marvin Harrison was going like whatever, not far behind him. And now Marvin Harrison's going super late. And there's like a gap that the market does like McBride more than Harrison. And there was concern last year going into the year about Kyler Murray's effect on McBride and his touchdown scoring ability. and Kyler Murray's gone, and the quarterback, he had 1 touchdown with Kyler Murray last year, and then Kyler Murray was gone after 5 games, and he scored 10 touchdowns in like 12 games with Jacoby Brissett. So it actually like seems, I'm not like, that's a small sample. I'm not like, 100% anything. It does seem like it was Kyler Murray that was holding back his touchdown scoring a little bit. He was one of only 2 tight ends last year to score double-digit touchdowns. It doesn't make any sense that we've over-regressed the routes-based stuff on McBride so much that he would be going in the same range he was going into last year. You're not taking any of the positive out of it. He had 126 catches last year. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing?
You know what? You're right. And I've made that mistake. I feel like I've been like, man, I think a lot of us, to me also, it feels like it was so fluky. Like it was like, well, there's no way they can continue at that rate. But you are absolutely correct that like he clearly showed
at
like,
this price, you don't have to continue at that rate.
Right.
Like,
and like if he was going to continue at that rate, he would be a first round pick, like, right. Like the numbers that he had last year. So I think it's, I will say part of it is the like Jacoby Brissett, being like he's holding out right now. So like, are we gonna like what would be the if they play Carson Beck? What's the effect there? Or Gardner Minshew? Like, is he like for Trey McBride's purposes? Could Gardner Minshew be a meaningful downgrade from Jacoby Brissett? And also, what are the odds that Jacoby Brissett makes it through the year? Right. So I think that like there's some concern from that perspective of like and it's a team that's probably not going to win a lot of games. So like, is Jacoby Brissett really going to make it through the year as a starting quarterback for a team that's going to win 4 games or whatever? But I hear you. Like we do need to factor in the positives. Yeah,
for sure. I think you need to not expect what Trey McBride did last year to follow up. But let me just give some numbers. Trey McBride last year had 169 targets. Kyle Pitts was second in the NFL with among tight ends with 118. That's 51 targets difference. He had 126 receptions. The next tight end was Pitts at 88. That's 38 receptions. They're like 38, 48, 38. What's my math? 38. Yeah, because Kelsey was 6th with 76. That's 50 full receptions less to like other top 10 tight ends. He had 1,239 yards. No other tight end had more than 928. There were only 4 other tight ends over 800 yards last year. He had 1,239. And then he was one of only 2 tight ends with double-digit TDs. He had 11. Goddard had 11. He doesn't have to do any of that, like to still be like a good structural pick in the early. Like you can, yes, he can. The quarterback can be worse than Jacoby Brissett, like all that stuff. You've over-regressed if you're thinking that he can't do that, and so I can't draft him. That's the over. You're directionally accurate. You do want to regress. Like there is concern of a rookie QB. There is concerns here. You don't want to over-regress. Like he's a really good player who had another great season, and now you're taking him at the same cost he was before he had that year. Why? What are you doing? He's proving to be an all-time great tight end in his prime. Like go take him. Go draft.
Yeah. Well, so we're about to be back on the clock. We have a 1 running back, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end. Start with Bijan, AJ Brown, Trey McBride. I feel great about that start. By ADP, it would be Luther Burden, Bucky Irving, Jameson Williams, Trevion Henderson, Dave Montgomery going right now. Jalen Waddle. Any of these names jumping out to you? Top of the sidekick is Jalen Waddle, so I'm just going to cue him. But who do you like here?
Burden or Waddle? I'm not like super into Burden at this cost. So if you like Waddle, like I think Waddle's really intriguing. Let's grab him and then we'll see what comes through. And we can talk about him on the next turn. But
my only thought to potentially taking Burden there is as somebody who's doing a ton of volume. Like I'm not getting a ton of Burden, so when we get him past ADP, I'm okay with it. But no, Bucky, Dave Montgomery, Trevion.
We probably should have taken Burden first for that reason, because now you kind of
if we want them both. But do you like what a running back here?
Not really, but I don't really like anything else, so we might as well just take
preference running back.
Bucky's fine.
Okay.
I mean, I was kind of saying I'm not really into taking that risk right now, but the sidekick had it at the top. I guess David Montgomery is probably pretty draftable, but because it's like Houston's just weird and they don't have other good running backs and they'll play inefficient back. He's going to get a ton of volume. But he's like strikes me as like sort of a classic dead zone-y back, but in best ball you have to be willing to take that type. That's why it's a completely different game. Probably
that was Josh Jacobs, right? On the Raiders, the first year that Josh Jacobs really went off, when nobody wanted Josh Jacobs, like this is just the most boring, the most dead zone-y. It's going to be a bad offense, and then he just went completely off. Like maybe I guess maybe Dave Montgomery doesn't have the profile that Josh Jacobs had at that point, but like kind of like he could be a bell cow, right?
For sure. No, I think Montgomery's gonna be. He's always been kind of about cow, and I think again the workhorse traits are that's a skill, and that's a big reason you wanted out of Detroit, and that's a big reason Houston was happy to trade for him because they needed that. Like they thought they had Mixon going into last year, they didn't want to make Woody Marks into that player. Mixon wasn't healthy, and they had to make Woody Marks and Nick Chubb into those guys, and they kept playing them, and they didn't They didn't acquire another running back or anything, and then they go out and they acquire Montgomery. I think Woody Marks is going to play some on pass downs and is going to play alongside him, but like Montgomery's going to be the lead back and play a lot. He's going to be like the Mixon basically, as long as he stays healthy. But like you're always kind of making that gamble. And then they're going to be good. They're going to play defense. They're going to score points. Like he's going to get goal line work. He's always been an efficient, like hard-nosed runner at the goal line. I think it's going to work out fine for David Montgomery. He's going to be a small win player, but it's going to work out fine for him as long as he stays healthy.
The big concern is just the offensive line, right? Is like the one thing that's like
sure, but you're just going to get so much volume, and you're going to get touchdowns, and you're going. I mean, in this range, like in best ball, like just to be able to get a back who you feel really good about the touches, I think is good. That's the thing we aren't getting with Bucky. I kind of froze up there. That's the first one where like my lack of experience drafting is a problem. I didn't realize Waddle's ADP until like right when we ran low on that. I saw it was like 50 is a little bit later. You could have potentially swung him around and then gone burn Waddle, but maybe he would have wanted the turn anyway. The turn was going receiver, it seems like, because I also like Jameson Williams there, and then it cleared out and I was like, I don't even know what I want here. But Burden Waddle would have been a nice turn. Waddle has always been a guy that has a hard time staying on the field and is more of a limited routes guy. And then he goes to a team where my issue with Denver is always that they rotate the receivers too much and there's limited routes, but like he can be really efficient in a good system. And I think Peyton schemes it up well. And so I think it's like the perfect spot to get the spike weeks you need out of Waddle. Like it's a really nice fit from that perspective. Oh, this is a gross range too. Oh, the sidekick.
It's a very much like depends on what's available range for me. But I agree. It's mostly
sidekick has got Drake May at the top. Surprise, surprise. Is it a bit at this point?
I mean, this is like his exact ADP, and we have AJ Brown.
We have AJ Brown. Yeah. Oh my God, it has it as teammate. It already has. They have it in there.
They've got it programmed as like most of the time. Are you okay with taking Drake May?
Yes. Yeah. We have AJ Brown.
To me, it's like this is such a gross range. So when I can get the quarterback paired up with when I can get Drake May, I guess specifically, or like if you do take Luther Burden, you can get Caleb Williams there. It's like, even if it's like this is too early to take Caleb Williams because I hate the range so much, I'm willing to do it.
That's why they gave us Waddle too, because that's the week 17. Got it.
Tony Pollard, Jalen Warren, Ramondre Stevenson. We could pull up
probably Warren. I would probably say Warren of those.
Okay.
I mean, Aaron Rodgers is back. He throws to the running backs a ton. I do think Rico Dowdle is going to catch a lot of balls, but Warren's a better player than Rico Dowdle. Kenny Gainwell was really good last year. I think there's going to be a lot of receptions and like Aaron Rodgers running backs his whole career were effective in fantasy. Like that was like a rule. Like you want an Aaron Rodgers back. They're going to catch passes. They're going to get goal line. They're going to get like different things. Like he throws a lot in the red zone too, but he'll check to a run if it's the right look and all those things. Like they're going to get opportunities. They're going to get efficient running because he does, even at this age, Aaron Rodgers does like scare defenses enough because he has like a really good arm talent and arm strength to throw to different areas. I think Michael Pittman was a really good ad. I think he's going to be better than DK Metcalf probably. Metcalf was a top guy.
I keep hearing people say that. People keep saying that about Pittman, like gonna maybe be the wide receiver one there. That's interesting.
I mean, I just like that's a guy that's like in his prime and has earned a lot of volume over his years. I mean, Metcalf's like intriguing too. It's going to be, I think, like better there to have both of those guys. I think their pass game is going to be a little bit interesting. I think like I've seen like Benjamin Solak, who's one of my absolute favorite NFL people. He's been kind of harping the point over at ESPN, and I saw him have a thing on social, I think, and then there was I think he wrote about it as well, about how like the Steelers basically shouldn't have brought Rodgers back because he like was so unwilling to throw vertically last year that like it just wasn't like you have to attack vertically. It wasn't a good enough fit and all these things. I do think like that was pretty intentional. I think that was an Arthur Smith thing. Like I disagree with him a little bit, even though I think he's like incredibly sharp and sharper than me, but I think it's a little bit of an Arthur Smith thing. I think it was a little bit of a like self-preservation thing. I don't think it was that he was incapable of getting vertical. And I think it was a little bit of the lack of personnel. And now that they have Metcalf and Pittman, I think you'll see a little bit, and then in a McCarthy offense, I think you'll see a little bit more vertical stuff, but still plenty of, underneath throwing. I don't think they're going to be like a great passing game or anything, but I do think Aaron Rodgers is still like probably a functional enough quarterback to be better than what their alternatives were, which was sort of his thesis that like he might as well have just played whoever they drafted. Was it Drew Aller or whatever? And like see what you have in some of the other guys, but I don't know. I get they're probably not going to win a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, but I guess I do think that with the adjustments they've made, they could be decent offensively. Not like good, but like because they're going to be slow paced as well. It's going to be annoying, but I'm not like out on Pittsburgh, I guess.
Not good for fantasy, but like they could be a good real life offense, right?
Yeah, I think they have like the right pieces that if things go a certain way, that it actually could look vaguely okay. What are we looking at?
So we are about to be back on the clock. Top of the psychic would be Josh Downs. We take Bo Nix for the Jalen Waddle stack. If you want to go like Laporta or Fannin as our tight end 2, we could always do that.
Is it too early for tight end 2? Yeah, we should take Pittman. We already took Warren. We kind of already made a bet on them, right?
Yeah, we could. I mean, we only have two wide receivers so far.
Yeah, I think we need a receiver. I like it.
All right, let's do it. Let's do Pittman.
And they get Tennessee in week 17, and we already got Calvin Ridley queued up for the future.
That's right. Well, he's going to go 40 picks ahead of ADP, so we
might
get him. But
I do really like Josh Downs. Okay, so Pearsall just went. I was going to pitch Pearsall, so we can take Downs. I think Pearsall's underpriced. I think he's a clear target there.
Interesting. Okay.
But I think a receiver makes more. I mean, I like Fannin a lot. Is there anyone you prefer here? I don't have.
I like Downs. I like the pick. I just wanted to make sure that you had time, like in case don't want to click in case another name caught your eye and you're like, oh no, I want him instead. So I just
No, I like grabbing some receiver depth there. That was a good turn for me. I think for like what I feel comfortable with where we're building.
Yeah, I agree. So now we are for the audio listeners, I guess, and the video listeners. We have Drake May at quarterback, Bijan Robinson, Bucky, Irving, and Jalen Warren at running back. At wide receiver, we have AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, and Josh Downs. And at tight end, we have Trey McBride. I feel that this is a really balanced team, which I enjoy when the board comes to me this way, because now we can kind of build out a lot of different ways from here. Like we're not forced to build a certain way from this point on, and kind of take the best available.
The chat said, I thought Gretch hated Pearsall. Explain yourself. I think I kind of dodged a little bit of a bullet last year with that Pearsall take with some of his injuries, because when he was out there, his targets, I was really concerned his targets per out run were super low. I knew they were going to make him more of a focal point, but Juwan Jennings was way better in 2024. And I was a little bit more Jennings over Pearsall. Jennings, like not even with the team anymore, probably. Their targets, Jennings, I think weirdly did actually still have a higher targets per out, but their targets per out really converged. And
Jennings is on the Vikings. I just wanted to make sure.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I memory hold that. Because he was a free agent for so long.
Yeah.
I kind of memory hold it. Yeah. Jennings' targets per out fell back down, and he basically had a year that looked a lot like his pre-2024 career, which is like, kind of just a guy. When the Vikings grabbed him, they were talking about how he's such a good blocker and the run game and stuff. And like, he's going to be a fine additional piece of their offense, but probably not a dude. But Pearsall added a bunch of targets per out. He also added yards per target, and his yards per out run shot up more than a half yard. So like, I wasn't into him going into year 2. I thought there was some real concerns. He's like going the same. This is another one of these guys where he's actually going quite a bit later. He got steamed up into like the 6th round by main event season. And that's when I was like, I don't want to be in on this. This is like everyone's acting like he's the like must-have guy of the year. And I don't think that's really fair. I thought Brandon Ayuk might come back at some point. Like now they need him, right? Like they obviously have Mike Evans as well, but Evans is pretty old. I'm not like out on Evans necessarily, but I don't think I'm like really super in on him. I think he's too expensive. And so Pearsall's whole thing is like, I don't think he can really earn big volume, but Shanahan can scheme it up for you. And Pearsall's efficient. He's good with the ball in his hand, and like the yards per target stuff got even better. And then what we saw last year was the ability to actually get up closer to a reasonable rate of targets per route, just based off like Shanahan scheming him some stuff. And then also for best ball, you're talking about like spike weeks. And if you go look at his game log. I talk about the game log stuff. Like when Shanahan's scheming it for him, it's there. When he's not, it's not. Well, that's fine for best ball. I don't want him in redraft as much, but I'm definitely here for Ricky Pearsall for best ball.
I was devastated to see Jonathan Brooks go ahead of us. That would have been a nice addition to the team. But we do have Rachaad White here if you want him. Casey Concepcion, I don't know if you like him. Jake Ferguson, Aaron Jones, Khalil Shakir. Any names you like?
I guess we probably just take Concepcion. Is that
because that's what the psychic says?
It's correlating downs with the Colts. I don't love the Browns' whole situation. A lot of mouths to feed in the worst quarterback room in the league, but we could have gotten Wandell for our Steelers bring back if we aren't going to get Ridley.
Oh, that's true. And we still could. That's still an option.
Yeah, we could. And I don't mind, like, so with McBride, I kind of always think late tight end. So but Kittle's a good value here. Rachaad White would be great. I mean, all these running backs we talked about are very favorable too. So, yeah, I mean, I guess that is sort of the meta right now is like if you get boxed out at running back, you're in a tough spot. So Wandell went. Let's just take Rachaad White. We like I'm in on that. I like that.
Yeah, I think
for best ball, especially that stability that he provides to a backfield, and I think he's gonna play.
We're also in a good situation that we have 3 late quarterbacks to add on. So we've got a clear alpha in Drake May, and then we can add on maybe 2 more later round quarterbacks, something to go with. I mean, if we want Aaron Rodgers, Daniel Jones, I don't know if there's any Cleveland quarterback that's draftable, maybe not, but
no,
we've got
a
couple
Cleveland QB. Yeah. And I don't think we can take Arizona QB either with McBride.
I forgot about McBride. Yeah, it's a little tough.
I mean, you could take Brissett, but I think you're going to see Beck this year late. So I don't want to be in on that quarterback situation. But yeah, I mean, Rodgers is Daniel Jones is the other late round one, and then who else?
Those are the 2 that we have. There's always you can throw on a Fernando Mendoza. CJ Stroud sometimes will be available at our next pick. Trying to think, we can always take a Bryce Young and try and stack him with Brazel or something. I don't know. There are some options later that we could consider. I do want to have to say that this is unfortunately going to have to be our only draft from my end, because I'm hearing my dog yelping, and this is a dog that I've had for 2 weeks. The situation is my wife left this morning. She's out of town tonight. This dog remains terrified of me 2 weeks in. He's just doesn't want to be around me, but also he will not go to the bathroom in our backyard. So the only way that he will go to the bathroom is if I take him on a walk. So I can't just run down and let him out and come back up and draft. So it's I have to actually take him on a walk to get him to go to the bathroom, because he refuses to go in my backyard. So yeah, unfortunately, this is going to have to be our only draft, which hopefully you'll come back on sometime this summer to do.
Yeah, for sure, man.
Because we crushed our draft so much last year.
Yeah, take care of those pets. I like this team so far. One of the things I like is I think our running backs got really strong, even though I'm not into Bucky. But now what if Bucky's the late season hammer is what I'm saying? Because I'm a little bit concerned about the full season thing. But if he winds up being really good for a stretch, if he's not good for the early part, but winds up being really good late, that could be pretty exciting. What are we looking at here? We're looking at some QBs and stuff. You don't want to get boxed out, probably, huh?
I think it's probably a good idea for us to take a QB, and Sam Darnold, another one of these quarterbacks that goes kind of late. Keaton Mitchell. I'd like to hear your thoughts on Keaton Mitchell also.
I like him.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm into it.
I wondered if that was the case. I guess Omar Cooper went. Oftentimes he's available here. But after you talked him up, that was enough to get him to go 130 here. I mean, who knows? Maybe people take him there anyway. Could be just a sidekick drafter. Do we want to take one of these quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think we probably don't want to mess around with Daniel Jones. I don't know if the person at the turn has any Colts, but
would you rather take Daniel Jones?
Yeah, because we have Downs, right? And we
do. Yeah.
We don't have a Houston receiver, right?
Yeah, you can always
Daniel Jones,
Dalton Schultz, or
sure.
I don't know if Jaden Higgins. He probably went.
Maybe we should have taken Hunter. We probably should have just taken Hunter and then hope to get Daniel Jones or take Stroud on the way back.
Oh, Cam Ward just went. He's another one of those. I mean, we could still take Travis Hunter. Looks like. You want to do that?
I'm good with either of those picks in the queue. I think those are the two options. What do you think structurally? You know better than me about what we're going to be able to do late. Do we need to take a third QB or?
I mean, I'm so hunter pilled that being able to take him here. No, I don't think we need to take a third quarterback because we have Drake May and like No, I think because we have Drake May, we're fine taking just two quarterbacks at this point.
I mean the Colts are a lot of people have made a lot of like the Colts played a pretty easy schedule, but they were good for the first like 10 games last year. And then right around when the schedule turned, they got a little bit worse for like 2 games, and then Daniel Jones got hurt. And then you don't have Daniel Jones. Like now you're playing like who I can't even remember. They were playing like some Riley Leonard and stuff. It was like
they brought in Phillip Rivers.
That's right. They brought in Phillip Rivers. That's who they were playing. Good Lord.
Yeah.
And they won a game. I think Shane Steichen's a good coach. And I think he's going to devise a good scheme. He ends up moving, the team ends up moving Michael Pittman, but I think he's going to be able to use Josh Downs, Tyler Warren. They sign Alec Pierce, who's I don't necessarily love Alec Pierce for fantasy, but they paid him a ton of money to be that vertical threat, and that scheme component that he provides is going to, I think, open up a lot of space for the passing game. You have Jonathan Taylor. Whatever you think about the Colts like schedule stuff during last season, I do think you have to give them credit for how good they were for most of the year. And I don't think it was just like random. Like I think Steichen's good. I think we got a little bit more positive from Daniel Jones. It's similar to the Darnold stuff I was saying earlier, where we're in a world now where you can win with a like certain type of limited quarterbacks. I don't think Daniel Jones is great, but I do think he's good enough that if you scheme up around him and you have the skill position talent that they have, Pittman is a loss for sure, but I still think Pierce, Downs, Tyler Warren, Jonathan Taylor is a lot of skill position talent, frankly. Because I'm pretty bullish on Downs, and I think Warren is pretty darn good. So, I'm pretty into like betting on the Colts as far as that's concerned. So I was wondering if Rodgers would make it back.
Yeah, I thought there was a chance he would also. I think he kind of has a wide band of where he goes. Where'd he go here? That was pick 160. I mean, maybe that's just where he is now. I think I've gotten him pretty late in some drafts. Let's see.
He's probably like the last of the viable QBs.
ADP of 170.5. So yeah, he went ahead of ADP.
By quite a bit.
Yeah, let's look. Who are the quarterbacks that are still? Let's see. Yeah, Geno Smith. I don't know if you consider him viable, but yeah, other than that,
I would probably push it at this point. Maybe next time around, if Brissett's still lingering, we decide to tack on a Cardinal. Who knows?
Yeah.
But,
Calvin Ridley went at 164. JGFC in chat. Yeah, I mean that was he was not going to make it back to us at this turn.
Ridley goes well ahead of ADP. I'm not saying to smash Ridley. Damn it! I wanted Okonkwo.
I wanted Okonkwo too. Yeah,
he would have been a really good second tight end.
Schultz is there. I know you're not.
Yeah, I like Schultz. Schultz is fine. He's a fine second tight end, and I think we probably got to address that, right?
I mean, yeah, unless you want to take like Jalen McMillan falling. Schultz it is.
Schultz. I'm trying to look at our next pick as well.
Yeah, so we are 2-4-6-2 right now. This is ADP right here. So if there are any like late round running backs you like, looks like Sean Tucker must have gone. No, he's still here. If you really like Sean Tucker, you can do that.
We took Bucky, so we don't want.
Oh, we did.
Maybe we already took Concepcion. We don't want to take Denzel Boston, do we?
We take Dylan Sampson if you want to do a different kind of Cleveland stack.
Let's do Boston. It's kind of weird, but I think we're kind of making a directional bet on like a certain. Oh, we got. Tucker.
Yeah, I guess that's not the end of the world. I didn't realize I must have positional. I forgot I did set my positional limits to 3-6-6-3, which I should just expand that. All right. Well, that's not what we wanted, but
we got a handcuff. We're solid at running back.
We were trying to take a different handcuff, and we got this handcuff instead. All right.
Look, I just made the case that Bucky was going to be a late round hammer or an early round, late season hammer because he wasn't even a good pick. And now we got Sean Tucker to carry the early part of the season.
Exactly. Now this is exactly what we wanted. Yeah, nailed it. Yeah,
that's fantastic. No, I mean, I don't think we necessarily needed Boston. I don't necessarily love that, but we were already making a directional bet on the Cleveland passing game to a certain degree.
Right. Yeah. It's tough though, just from the standpoint of like who's going to be the quarterback. Like, I don't feel great about any of their current quarterback options.
No, I don't. That's the other pick I don't necessarily love. If I had more time to think about, I probably wouldn't have been super into the Concepcion pick. I don't mind it or anything. Like, he's an upside rookie there. I'm totally okay with, but if I was going to bet on it's similar to the Ridley point where I'm a little concerned about the passing game. And if I was going to bet on the passing game, I would probably just do it through a cheaper option. Right. Like, that's part of it. Is like, if you're going to make the bet on Concepcion then you probably do like the price for Boston. You probably also like the price for Jerry Jeudy, who I'm not like, I don't think is good or anything, but he's still under contract for a ton of money, and I think is going to run a lot of routes. Like, you can make a little bit of a similar case to the Ridley thing. He had one of the worst seasons last year of anybody, but I don't think like he's not super old. I don't think he's like impossible to be a decent player as a bounce back guy. I don't really want to be on him again because I had a lot of him last year and it didn't work well. What happened to our draft?
I'm getting there. It's about to pop back up, so we are not on the clock yet. But give it a second. We'll be on the clock in this one. It'll pop to the top.
When we're on the clock, you're gonna have to.
We are on the clock. Okay, where the hell is this draft? Oh my god! I think we're on the clock. Why is I have lost our draft? Shit.
This is great. I don't think we're gonna make the semis with this team.
Wait. I think it. Okay, hang on. We're good.
You found it.
I found it. Hang on. Oh, and I got to go into the draft. I need to close this. Go to draft. I had to go change my rankings because I realized like I can't do the like click on it the last second, queue them up. That's usually I just queue them up at the last second, and that's how I do the draft. And that's why we got Sean Tucker in the last one, because I queued it up last second, but I had positional limits. So I went to change that, but we are good now.
We're good.
So this is by ADP. Jacoby Brissett is the top by ADP. If we want to do a third quarterback, he is not the sidekick top. Sidekick likes Tank Dell, Torrey Horton, Dontavian Wicks, Eli.
You don't even have a rank on him. Sorry, who? They like some receivers here.
Yeah.
Can we take another running back? I like Emmanuel Wilson.
I don't see why not.
I mean, I think he's kind of interesting late. I get that obviously you have Zach Charbonnet coming back, but I think it's possible that Charbonnet is just like, maybe not fully there. And then you have a rookie. And I'm into Jadarian Price, frankly, at his cost too. I mean, he's one of the rookies that I was less in on coming into the draft that I've come around on just from landing spot and stuff. But he's definitely pretty interesting. So I think we need another receiver. And then the question is, do we want to take I think we can do 2 tight ends probably and be done, right?
Yeah. McBride and Schultz.
Do you want to take Brissett and then do a receiver on the way back in 18?
We could do that.
Let's take a third QB and it's probably wrong. Maybe the pick should have been the rookie from Arizona. What's his name? Beck.
Carson Beck. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if Brissett does play well, then he's probably going to hold on to the job. Like, I don't know if they're not fighting for like the top draft pick, they would want to.
The whole contract thing right now is he wants to be paid like a starter.
Right.
And they kind of treated this offseason like he'd be the starter. They don't want to pay him that way. But if there's some kind of agreement that's reached at some point, I think he'll become draftable because it probably won't be him making as much as he wants to make, but it may be enough of an acknowledgement that like, yeah, you are probably our starter. But if he's not good enough and their season goes haywire, yeah, they'll go to Carson Beck, and maybe that's the plan anyway. But I don't know that like they're like super committed to Beck as the guy of the future as much as they just, we're definitely going to draft something of upside. But Beck was their season's going to go poorly, and then they're going to probably want to go to the rookie. But Beck was what was he around? Did they take him around 3? Trying to remember.
I don't know the answer. I'd have to look it up.
I'm looking it up. Yeah, around 3.
Yeah.
He went reasonably high, but
So we could have probably done the wide. Is that what you're saying? Take the wide receiver first, and then back at the like final pick.
We feasibly could have taken back. Yeah,
feasibly, yeah. I don't know, but Jacoby Brissett, like he did show us something. He looked pretty good last year.
For sure.
A lot of
and I think he's correlated with the upside for McBride. If Brissett plays a lot this year, then we actually really like our McBride pick. So that's part of. And then what the receivers you had up, I was like, I mean, to me they're probably no different than what we're going to get in 18. I don't know a ton of the ones, but none of them were jumping out at me. So that was part of the reason I was like, let's just take Brissett and then think about the receiver. But do you mind going back to the other screen and kind of clicking on the receiver and scrolling through a little bit? And or I guess I can probably do it on my screen. I just want to look at some of the late.
I'm just going to sort by ADP here. So it's Malik Washington, Kayshon Boutte, who might end up on the Eagles, Cooper Kupp, Dontavian Wicks, AD Mitchell, Elijah Surratt. Surratt goes. Troy Franklin, Chris Brazzell, Pat Bryant, Keon Coleman, Christian Kirk, Tyquan Thornton, Jacoby Lane, Jalen Knoll, Jack Besh. Any of these names pop into you?
I'm gonna keep my thought to myself, but there's one that I like there.
If we want to go,
one that I think is a pretty interesting. Oh, I don't know if it makes a ton of sense. No, I think it does. I'll tell you in a second.
All right. You could also type it into the chat box if you want to, but we could also just wait till it's our pick. Now, if I can find our chat here. They keep changing StreamYards. Oh, there it is. Private chat. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know why I'm being so secretive, but
I mean, after we saw Calvin Ridley go.
Option. Yeah, these guys are talking up or going. So I threw in chat Pat Bryant, and the reason I was a little unsure is we did take Waddle, but the more I thought about it, I actually probably really like it with Waddle. Bryant late last year in the postseason, they wanted to start trying to like feature him. It felt like, and he got hurt in both. He got a concussion and then he got a hamstring injury. But in both games, he got 3 touches on like the first drive and then went out right away. It was kind of crazy both games because I
forgot about that game. It was like they targeted him 4 times on one driver.
One game I think he had 2 catches and a carry, and the next one he had 3 catches right away and then hurt his hamstring. And I was like, oh my god, because I had him on some playoff stuff that I was like, this is brutal. Like I think the play was right. I think they really like Bryant, and I think he was good. I think they see him as the heir apparent to Cortland Sutton. They brought in Waddle. The reason I really like him with Waddle is I don't think he really, like chat saying he can coexist with Waddle. I don't think he really. I think it's a bet against Cortland Sutton to be in on Waddle and Bryant, which Waddle's probably already a bet against Cortland Sutton to a degree. And so, like, if Sutton were to go down or whatever, they end up trading him or something. I think Bryant is the long-term player in this offense for that Sutton role. And they were already talking about him like that last offseason. And I do think they were trying to kind of move that direction late. Troy Franklin, I think, already kind of failed out. He was getting a lot of routes and then fell down. I think Bryant is intriguing. I'm surprised he's like not getting drafted in a lot of these because his ADP is quite a bit far down there. A lot of these receivers we saw go in the last couple of rounds, I'd be a little bit skeptical of. Bryant's one that I think should go in every draft, probably.
I think I'm with you, and I think that it's like a lot of people kind of conflate in their minds like Pat Bryant and Troy Franklin, and I do this. Like I'm guilty of this, of like because it was like, well, there's like a few weeks where like Troy Franklin had surpassed Cortland Sutton as like being on the field and being targeted the most. Like there was a long stretch of the season where it was like, oh, Troy Franklin apparently is a wide receiver 1 in Denver now, and then like, oh, Cortland Sutton took back over and he's like the clear alpha for a little while. But then you're right, Pat Bryant toward the end was like as a rookie was really starting to become like a great thing on Denver. And then they had Jalen Waddle. So it's like, oh, well, now they had it's a 4th receiver, and I don't know what to make of the first 3. And so I think it's just a whole confusing situation. But yeah, I like that call. It's like a second-year breakout could come.
To your point about Franklin, that it's absolutely the way I see it. And it's really that's why I'm more out on Franklin, even though he had way more production and everything, is like, I feel like he got his opportunity and failed and like was trending down in routes late in the season, was getting used less. Not like full on field, not like he can't play some this year or any of that stuff. But I do think we saw a little bit of like him trending back down in playing time, a little bit of like that ship sailing for him. So Bryant would be the one going into year 2 that would be like Franklin going into last year, obviously in year 2 in the system, and got the more opportunity after his rookie year, that I feel a little bit better about betting on being ascending as sort of an upside play. It's obviously all the receivers in this range are flyers. Like, I'm not saying he's a clear, like, my case was he should probably be drafted in every draft, but
yeah.
The idea is like he could totally be a 0, but I do think you're talking about ascending. I'm looking at his game log down the stretch. Week 11, 6 targets, 5 catches, 13. He didn't play in week 12. Maybe they had a bye. Yeah, they had a bye. 7 targets, only 3 catches, but 7 targets. Week 14, 4 targets, 4 catches. Week 16, he missed a game there. 8 targets, 5 catches. Week 18, missed another game, it looks like. He gets 5 targets, 4 catches. And then we were talking about the first postseason game against Buffalo. He has 3 catches on the first drive. The next one, he has a catch and a rushing attempt. So 2 touches. He had 3 catches and 3 offensive snaps against Buffalo. He only played 3 snaps. And then he had 2 touches and 9 snaps against New England. And left that game right away. He only played 12 postseason snaps. He got 5 touches. Like, it was kind of crazy. And like, I was reading all those game logs on the stretch. I mean, to sum that up, 4+ targets in each of the final 5 regular season games, 3+ catches in all of those. I mean, he was more a part of the offense down the stretch than his full season numbers kind of dictate. So anyway, that's a little late round guy that I would be.
I like it. Yeah. That's some great alpha right at the end. If you've stuck with us for over 2.5 hours, then you got to hear about Pat Bryant as the great late round pick. I'll read off our team and then need to get out of here to take care of the dog. So we ended up with 3-6-7-2 build with Drake May, Daniel Jones, Jacoby Brissett, Bijan Robinson, Bucky Irving, Jalen Warren, Rashad White, Sean Tucker by accident, Emmanuel Wilson, AJ Brown, Jalen Waddle, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Casey Concepcion, Travis Hunter, Pat Bryant, and at tight end, Trey McBride and Dalton Schultz. Even the Sean Tucker pick, I don't mind. Like, I think like even with Bucky, like I don't mind having a handcuff there. I think the team worked out. I think we drafted a good one here. How do you feel about it?
I feel good. Yeah, I don't mind the Tucker pick as much. I mean, probably the Bucky one was the one. You know, we were talking. I mentioned it.
Sure.
After.
Yeah,
we could have probably liked to go receiver there, which would have the way to play it would have been to take Burden first. Or Jameson Williams first, pick your poison and then try to get Waddle on the way back. But we do get the bring back. You have the Patriots and Denver thing there, and then I mean the Brissett pick is the other one. Like I always like to think about like what were the picks that maybe we'd redo with more time and everything. The Brissett one I'm okay with, because I do think it's correlated to the McBride upside. I mean, very specific to the fact that we were in on McBride. I'm okay with, and we probably needed a third QB there. I'm okay with taking him. So yeah, I mean, I like the Warren pick. I like the Rashad White pick. We didn't really get a lot of like rookie upside, but I actually like those. Like we talked about earlier in the show about how some of the vets that are just a little bit priced down to where that they probably are. And in best ball, those kinds of running back picks can be really meaningful. So I think the running back room is pretty good overall. I'm maybe like a little too excited about Emmanuel Wilson. That was probably a 0 pick late, but I think he could be a little bit interesting in Seattle. But that they're going to run a lot and they'll use some different guys. I think he could have some volume, maybe not a ton as that third guy, but especially like early in the year, like maybe some volume. And then the big concern would be the receiving room is just like, do we have enough? But I think AJ Brown, we talked a lot about, we're really liking him. We get a couple Denver receivers in there. We've kind of made a correlated bet on the Pittsburgh offense with the Warren and Michael Pittman thing. And, I think the question is just sort of, do we have enough ceiling at receiver? But I think the team's pretty darn good. I'm pretty excited.
I think it's a strong one. We've also made some it's a nostalgic for 2025 team where we've got all 3 of the Tampa running backs from last year with Rashad White, Bucky Irving, Sean Tucker. We've got Michael Pittman and Josh Downs together. So, reuniting old teammates on the team.
The other nostalgic thing was like, there's a lot of like very like for the people that know me, the Gretch brand guys. We got AJ Brown, we got Trey McBride, we got Bucky Irving, who I was really into as a rookie. Oh, yeah. Like several Gretch brand guys here that I was pretty excited to get on the team.
Love it. Yeah, it's perfect. All right. So I assume you're going to be getting back into more content soon. Are you going to be doing the projections thing with Leone again? That's always one of my favorite shows every year. I don't know if you guys are doing that again or if you've decided.
I've heard from like a dozen people about this at least now. Leone is taking even more of a step back than me, so I don't think he's going to be doing it.
Okay.
But I'm not. I think it's still going to be probably doing it in some capacity. I'm not entirely sure yet. But I was talking to Leone. He's trying to facilitate like maybe I'll be doing it with some of the other ATR guys with like Jack Miller, Mark Dink, and bring some of those guys. So I don't know. I'll be talking with them or talking with whatever. The answers I don't know yet.
Okay.
I will be doing something in some capacity if it doesn't work out with ETR for whatever reason. I'll find somewhere else to do something because that's a show that people really liked and want. And so yeah, it'll exist in some capacity. It'll be a little different this year though, unfortunately.
Yeah,
because we all love
Leone. Still be great, I'm sure. Yeah, I've loved hearing you guys kind of go back and forth on how you project players. Always a great time. But if you do it with one of the other brains at ETR, that'll still be a great show. Or wherever you find another brain to bounce ideas off of. Anything else you wanna shout out before we get out of here?
No, man, just you. Thanks for having me on. This is a blast. We went super long. Sorry to your dog, but I had a lot of fun. I haven't done a stream in a while, and so it was good to get on here. And thanks for letting me just have the floor awesome. to think about some things. It was good.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts, and I'm happy that we got to do such a long show. And also apologies to my dog. I did try to let him out just right before, but I can't catch him. He runs away from me. So I'll try again to let him out now. Thank you to Gretch. Go check him out. Stealing Signals. He's on the road of his channel sometimes. You can find him at Yards Per Gretch on Twitter. I don't have anything else scheduled for this week. I'll be doing the same schedule next week. Monday afternoon, Tuesday afternoon, Wednesday afternoon. It'll be 4 to 4:30 Eastern is the start time for those shows. So I'll be back. At the very least, I'll be back next Monday and through next those 3 days. All right, we are going to get out of here. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us, drafting with us, etc., etc. Please like the video, subscribe, all the good stuff. All right, thanks guys. Getting out of here.